Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome and thank you for attending tonight. Unusual to have a meeting on a Thursday night, but as schedules didn't allow for the regularly scheduled meeting next week, we moved it up till tonight. Shannon, please note, there's Shannon. Please note that all council members are present with the exception of Mr. Walker, and he is excused. Under ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations, a couple announcements. City Hall and city business offices will be closed Monday, June 19th in observance of Juneteenth, and Tuesday, July 4th in observance of Independence Day. Police, fire, and rescue services for life-threatening or in-progress emergencies may be reached by calling 911. The police department will be open for walk-in emergencies. For water department emergencies, call 208-773-3517. The first city council meeting in July will be Wednesday, July 5th, due to the 4th being a holiday. And the Parks and Recreation Department is hosting the first movie in the park of the season on Friday, June 23rd. The movie Luca will be playing at Tullamore Park starting at sunset. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any conflicts of interest, declaration of conflicts of interest? Would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the June 6, 2023 City Council meeting. Item B is payables May 29th through June 7th, 2023. Item C is April cash and investments. Item D is a Vista agreement with the police department to pay overtime for officers' help reducing trespassing on a Vista property. Item E is public shuttle services agreement between Kootenai County Public Transportation, CityLink, and Post Falls Park and Recreation for shuttle services during the Post Falls Festival.
Any questions on consent calendar?
I'd move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Schoaf,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Tonight, we do have two public hearings. Anybody wishing to testify, there are forms on the podium in the back. Please, are the forms gone? Do we need more forms, Shannon? We're going to get more forms. Put them on the back. And so we'll give you an extra minute to sign them and get them up. There are two public hearings, and whenever we get a big crowd, I always like to remind everybody, there are some rules of the game, so to speak. So we want to listen to everybody. So when you're called, please come forward, state your name for the record, and we will listen to you. If you want to be heard, you have to speak up at the microphone. We don't entertain or allow comments from the audience just because it's disruptive. So let's be respectful for everybody, whether you agree with them or not, and that way we can get through this and listen to everybody's opinion and give them the respect that they are due. Did you get more back there, Shannon? Thank you very much. So with that, the first public hearing tonight is the Millsap Landing Annexation. With that, I'll open the public hearing.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, and members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls, presenting the Millsap Landing Annexation Staff Report, case file ANX 2216. So the owner is Wild Horse Investments. The applicant representative is Ray Kimball of Whipple Engineering. What's being sought is for City Council to approve an annexation request for the single-family or residential zoning district on approximately 5 acres. On April 11th of this year, the Planning and Zoning Commission did forward a recommendation for the single-family R1 zoning district. Not really germane tonight, but I did want to just shed light with that concurrent with this annexation and zoning request. They did conditionally approve a subdivision that would provide connection from Bogey to the south, the Knapp Drive. And what the proposal is for 18 single-family lots averaging approximately 8,700 square feet. The minimum lot size was 6,500 square feet. What I did want to make clear was any sort of like densification increase on that, they would have to bring back that subdivision because it was conditionally approved as this is the format of this. Any, once again, increased density would require to go back to P&Z. Now going and looking at the actual annexation elements, the subject property is I gotta put these on, sorry. Just a bit west of Cecil Road, south of Bogey Drive, just north of the Knapp addition, that's to the south. The current land use on that is for large lots, single-family residence. It is over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The water provider would be the Ross Point Water District, with wastewater being provided by the City of Post Falls. Looking at the first review criteria, amendments should be in accordance with the future land use map. The yellow that you see on the map, that's that low density residential designation, and that encompasses all single family dwelling units up to 8 dwelling units per acre. And R1 would be an implementing zoning district. Looking at the surrounding zoning and uses, you see just to the north and east, those are Kootenai County properties with single family residential uses. To the west and north are, to the west and south are other R1 zone properties or R1 smaller developed properties. Looking at criteria B, that turns you to looking at the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and is it consistent with the requested zoning. First goal is keep Post Falls neighborhood safe, vital, and attractive. Goal 6, maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace and concert with the need and plan objectives. One of those is to connect neighborhoods to other major roads, so connecting Bogey to Knapp would improve that connectivity along that area. Plan forward and establish types of quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. Potentially additional housing would assist that, as there is a housing shortage been identified in Post Falls. Looking at the future land use, it does, they do have a focus area, as you see here, highlighted with a red box. That's the general location of this proposal, and that would put it in the 41 North focus area. See here, it identifies that this area is estimated to have additional residents by 2040, and this area would provide some of the housing for that. Goal 8, protect and maintain Post Falls natural resources, including clean air, soils, rivers, and aquifer, and minimizing light and noise pollution citywide. One element of is preserving the aquifer may be done through getting septic off the aquifer. Goal 14, involve the community in Post Falls and local government planning and decision making. Moving on to policies. Support land use patterns that maintain and enhance community level service, foster a long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, implement goals and policies in the comp plan. Policy 2, apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of the factors including future land use mapping, which I went over. Compatibility with the surrounding land uses. You saw that to the west and the south were already R-zone properties in the city, either developed or undeveloped, with other single-family homes in the county to the north and east of there. Infrastructure and service plans and existing and future traffic patterns. That was further explained in the staff report, but there was no identified encumbrances or problems identified with the proposal. Goals and policy of the comprehensive plans should be consistent with related master plans and or facility plans.
John, you're getting a little bit quiet. Could you just?
Am I? Okay, thank you. I have a tendency, the taller you are, to get away from it, so I gotta slump over like my son, then you could hear me.
Then we can hear you.
Yeah. So policy 2, apply or revise zoning designations with careful considerations of factors including, I think I already went over that. So, let's see, why is that there? Sorry. There's some of the infrastructure and service plans elements there identified. and it cited that the Ross Point Water District did have a will serve letter. Also regarding the Bogey Drive, it was identified as a minor collector roadway, and there is the right-of-way needed as well as the sidewalk. I already identified the connection to NAP. Policy 8 in the comp plan encourages compatible infill development and redevelopment of vacant lands and underutilized properties, which this would do as it's a county island surrounded by incorporated areas. It is readily serviced, infrastructure is nearby. Policy 15, ensure that adequate plan is available for future housing needs. I kind of already went over that. Plan for and protect transportation corridors for encroachment and preserve adequate rights of way for future corridors, including utility facilities. We get the necessary right-of-way with annexations and the necessary improvements at the time of subdivision, and it develops. Policy 27, work to improve street connectivity in all areas in Post Falls, improving walkability and public health and safety and transportation efficiency. Once again, I already identified how this is going to connect Bogey to NAP. Policy 33, annexation should help implement Post Falls transportation plans, enabling completion and preserving continuity and circulation. Policy 45, guide annexation decisions by considering the following. You can see that there. I've already mentioned many of that's there. And it was identified in the staff report, the consistency with those master plans. The third one, zoning is assigned following considerations of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, or geographic and natural features. I already talked a lot about the traffic patterns and the connectivity, and the fact that it's over the Arathorn Prairie Aquifer. D, commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. That's not applicable, as they're looking for low-density development, and they are further away from urban areas. You can see that here on this slide. In red, your more urban corridors are up along Highway 41, along Mullen Avenue, Seltice Way, and generally you transition away from those corridors for your higher intense commercial multifamily into more of your single-family subdivisions. This one here, criteria F, deals with industrial zoning, which they aren't asking for, so that wouldn't be applicable. Here's the agencies that were notified. Post Falls Highway District requests the city annex across Bogey Drive to the northern right-of-way line. That's typical. We usually get right-of-way line to the northern extent as possible. Sometimes there's some circumstances we only can go to center line, but typically we try to get to the northern extent of the right-of-way adjacent, or the eastern, whatever the farthest is from the annexation across the right-of-way. Yellowstone Pipeline identified that there was no comment. CUNY County Fire Rescue, they typically comment that they reserve their comments as part of a site development. That's when a lot of their matters are concerned with. School district remained neutral, and DEQ identified no environmental impact related comments. So there's the zone change review criteria in a nutshell there. Any questions for me at this time?
Questions of John?
I just have a quick question. You touched on a little bit about the northern right-of-way boundary going across Bogey.
Yep.
On the south end of the proposed project, where is it going to be Hahn Street that continues on there, or whatever the name of that street will be? Will we be obtaining the easternmost right-of-way? Looks like it crosses the property line there, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so this location here, this is private property, so we'd be getting the minimum roadway needed at this time for right-of-way to make that connection. At such time, the property to the east develops, they would then provide the right-of-way for the other half of that roadway.
So effectively, we're going to have half a street until the other parcel develops?
Correct.
I see. So how, is that going to be allowable for north-south connectivity on that street?
You know, I could have Rob Paulus come up and actually
Okay.
comment on how that would kind of work out.
Okay.
Members of council, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. Normally, we go for center line plus 10 feet on a roadway such as that because that would allow for the development of two-way traffic. In this case, there's not enough room to get the Centerline plus 10 and make it work because you have the stub street in to the south. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have them put in the roadway, but it's going to be blocked off so it can still be utilized for bicycles, pedestrians walking through that area. You do have the high school and elementary school fairly close by to the south, so that could be an attractive route for bicyclists and kids to utilize. And until that parcel to the east develops, we won't have that open for vehicular traffic. So that area will serve as a dead end for the time being.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
And then fires, their concern usually comes at 30 lots or more, and so for two ways out. Hence why they didn't provide any additional comment on this particular layout and proposal.
Any other questions? Thank you, John. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Ray Kimball. I'm an engineer for Whipple Consulting Engineers. I'm here tonight on behalf of Wild Horse Investments. I will keep this as short as possible. So, as John mentioned, this is the project site. Knapp Addition is to the south, Bogey is to the north. So it's located just north of the high school if we're trying to orient yourself in the location. So a future land use map shows this as low-density residential. And the proposed annexation is R1, which matches the surrounding zonings. So annexation criteria, so what John said. So for the most part, everything here, all the annexation criteria are met. It's adjacent to the same zoning on the south and west, meets the transportation master plan. Low density residential zoning is further away from urban activity. We're over a half a mile from Highway 41. It matches all of the low density and low intensity uses in the area. It is in accordance with the future land use map, low density residential, R1, low density residential. And it's in accordance with comprehensive plan goals and policies. John went through them a lot. They're also in our narrative. I don't need to go through them again. If you have any questions or want on any of those, I'll be happy to address them. And that's my presentation, record time.
Questions, Mr. Kimball? Thanks, sir.
All right, thank you.
Shannon, anyone wishing to testify? And for folks who are testifying, please keep your eye on the clock up here. You get 4 minutes, and we try to hold you to it, so when you are testifying, just keep your eye on that. Oh, okay. Wishing to speak in opposition, Kathy Mills.
Dear Director and members of Community Development and City Council
Could
members,
you give your name for the record to start out, please?
Kathy Mills.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for reading and considering this neighborhood comment and perceived need pertaining to the annexation of Millsap Landing, ANNX-22-16. Those of us who live in the homes in the surrounding neighborhoods, which is, if this goes through, it'll be 5 neighborhoods between Poline Avenue and Bogey Drive, Greens Ferry Road and Cecil Road, do not have any access to a park for our children. We currently have 25 to 30, and as of yesterday, there's 35 kids I've counted now that live in our neighborhood. And 35 children, and the closest park is Tullamore Park, which is 0.6 miles away, and Syringa Park, which is 1.3 miles away. And to get to these parks, our young children would have to cross Cecil Road or Greens Ferry, both busy roads. This is just considering Rindley Estates. There are many others that would benefit from the Millsap Landing project, but to instead become a park and common area for us to enjoy. As building developments proceed, traffic is increasing, yet safe places to ride bikes, play games, skateboard, rollerblades, take walks, throw frisbee, play softball, volleyball has decreased. As more families move in, the need only grows. The lots of the homes are too small for most of these activities, forcing children out into the streets or even into our neighbor's property. We would like to suggest that this piece of property be considered by the city, as it stands, the county, as a perfect centrally located space to use for the betterment of Post Falls community. We sincerely thank Amber Blanchett and all the other persons involved in city planning. The city's current level of service and standard is 16 acres of parkland per 1,000 people. Neighborhood park serve a variety of age groups within the emphasis of youth and small children. They range in size from 4 to 7 acres and serve residents within a quarter of a mile. Development impact fees. I had one person ask me when I was doing my rounds in our neighborhood of what they thought about this, ask about taxes. But I found development impact fees are the main source of funding for the expansion of parks in Post Falls related to growth. Young families in Post Falls has higher percentage of children. And I say our neighborhood, and you'll see your packets there. If you look on the very back page, you'll see a couple pictures. And one picture is the property that they're talking about, the Millsap Landing, and there's a walkway, a path that goes through there, which would work perfect for kids to be able to access that from the Knapp neighborhood, not from our neighborhood, but from the Knapp. And the other picture we have on there is supposedly our common area. That's all we have. And there's nothing else around our area for the kids, and it's too dangerous for them to cross those two big streets. And all the kids are always out in the road. So thank you for listening to me and our concerns for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all on the testimony, correct, Shannon?
Yes.
Applicant wish to rebut?
Mayor, Council, Ray Kimball again for the record. As a resident of the city of Post Falls, I also love parks. There's Tullamore Park, which is right down Bogey Street. Annexation development of this property will connect Bogey to the south through Knapp Addition to the high school playfields, as well as the elementary school playfields. This property is located centrally around a lot of parks. And I think that access to parks from this property is taken care of. I believe Ms. Mills, I think she said she lived in Rindley Estates, which was developed about 2 years ago. And the families that would be buying houses and living in on this property would have the exact same access to the same parks that her neighborhood does. It makes sense. And I believe, the city has a park acquisition plan and a comprehensive plan as part of that. And there are some spheres of influence for all of these parks. This is within those spheres of influence. And so it makes sense for it to be annexed and zoned R1. And with that, I'll answer any questions if you got any more.
Now any questions for Mr. Kimball?
Thank you.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. So first we need to decide if the annexation makes sense.
Yep, that's the first question. Does annexation of this property make sense? Is it something that the city wants to proceed with at this time?
I believe so. It's a county pocket, which is one of our primary goals of the comprehensive plan, is to fill in the county pockets. So it makes sense to me.
Okay.
And it's surrounded by R1 already, so.
Agree.
It has adequate roadways, I'm fine.
Kenny? Okay. So we have 5 yeses.
All right, so we jump into the zone change or the zoning approval criteria. The first criteria is the requested zoning consistent with the future land use map?
Yes.
Yes.
Shows as R1, and it is R1. They're requesting R1, actually.
Goal number 2, or excuse me, criteria number 2, is it consistent with the goals and policies found in the plan?
Yeah, but connecting neighborhoods, absolutely. And you've got the same zoning west and south already.
And it fills in county pockets.
County park.
Let's see, number 3, zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. Quickly go through them. Street classification, how does this fit with the existing street classification?
Bogey's a minor collector, which will be more than capable of handling traffic.
And then how does it match up with existing development?
Pretty ideally, it's all R1 to
The
the
same,
south and west.
exactly the same, yeah.
Future land uses. I think you sort of answered that by saying it is consistent with the future land use.
Future land use
This is
map.
why we changed some of these
Right.
for future hearings. Community plans, we already talked about the comp plans, so I think you've got that one covered. So number 4 is not applicable because that's commercial and high-density development. 6 is not applicable, that's industrial. So number 5, limited or neighborhood commercial and low-density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties that proceed further away from higher intensity urban activities. So does this meet that criteria?
That was addressed.
Yeah, it's a fair distance from 41 and from Seltice, so.
All right, that's the criteria. So from there would be a motion to approve or deny based on your evaluation of the criteria.
Any additional comments at this point or prior to that? That's allowable, correct?
I would like to say one thing. You may be wondering what's up with the criteria. You'll see it on this public hearing and the next public hearing. We do have 6 residual of the old review criteria. I believe this might be the last 2, this one and the next one. As we get future annexation zone changes, that's when we have a 3 review criteria. You'll start seeing that new review criteria start coming before you.
Okay.
Good.
Any other additional comments or someone want to make a motion?
We can make the motion and then comment after that, right? I would move to approve the Millsap Landing annexation file number ANNX-22-16.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion?
I do understand the concerns about kids crossing busy streets to parks. One thing is we don't own that property. The city doesn't own that. So we can't just tell the property owner that, hey, you got to turn that into a park. The way that annexations typically work is the property owner comes to us with a proposal, and we got to say yes or no. So, yeah, while it may be a good place for a park, that's not what the property owner wants to do with it, and we can't tell them to do that with it. There are parks in fairly close proximity, and if the street crossing situation becomes an issue, we are more than eager to address that for safety purposes. But that's just not something in a country that values private property rights. We can't tell the property owner that, hey, you have to make this into a park. So,
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Malloy.
aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Our next public hearing is the Thomas Satchwell North Crown annexation and zone change with potential land exchange, file number ANX-22-14/ZZC-22-7.
Mayor, before John gets started, I wanted to make a quick note. We received a letter day or so ago that came in after the cutoff date for receipt of written comments. We normally, when those come in as by email, we respond with an email so people know. Because this came in by mail, we couldn't get a response back to them before the night's hearing. So I wanted to mention really quickly, in case someone was here, that the letter that came in from the Homeowners Association at Crown Point isn't in the record. I believe we have a person who's going to speak to that already, but I wanted to make sure that they knew that, so when they come up, they can speak to it.
Perfect. Open the public hearing.
Yes, so before I get started, I do want to say that staff's going to do the best job presenting this proposal. There's a lot of moving parts. So at any point in time, you want to stop, ask questions. If it's needed to at that time, go ahead, ask questions so we can stay on course. But yeah, it's a little more, we're ramping it up in a complexity from the last public hearing.
I appreciate all the pictures in the packet. That helped me out.
Yes.
So yes, so the city council is going to be reviewing this application. The applicants are the City of Post Falls and the Jacqueline Land Company. They're the owners as well on different parts of this proposal.
John, let me interrupt 1 minute.
Yep.
I see a few folks stepping up. Last call, please bring it up. But last call for anybody wishing to testify. So if you haven't filled out a form, please do so and bring it to Shannon so we can get everything in order prior to public comment. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and I'll say that as far as this, the reason why you see city staff, normally you see a name up there doing the main presenting. So I'll be doing the bulk of the staff report, but when it comes to, there's an element of this, the land exchange. John Beecham, the Public Works Director, will be coming up here to speak on the land exchange specifically to kind of divvy it up for those questions that may come. You get a more clear, concise answer potentially. So yeah, what's being asked is for your review and approval for the proposed mentioned land exchange, the North Crown zone change, and the Thompson Satchwell annexation. John will go into this, but as you may identify, there's a purchase and sales agreement that kind of bundles this all together and why it's all coming before you tonight, which he'll try to explain and make that somewhat clear. And here's, you see those elements there through the process, the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission where they made their recommendation on May 17th, and that was just for the zoning elements for the zone change and annexation. The City Council tonight will be reviewing the land exchange, the annexation elements of this, and the zone change elements. So now, John could come up and have fun with this for a bit.
So as we're handling this handoff, I should have mentioned this before we got started, because there's so many moving parts tonight with land exchange, 2 potential annexations, 3 potential zonings. We adjusted the time limits for testimony to make sure people had sufficient time to talk to all of the different the moving parts here. So the applicant's getting 22 minutes, the public is getting 6 minutes, the rebuttal is 11 minutes. That way, people should have more time to be able to speak to all of the moving parts tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm John Beecham, Public Works Director here at the city. I'm glad John said that I'm going to make this clear because, as he said, there are a lot of moving parts, so set the bar high for me. I believe you have a handout in front of you that looks like this, and throughout the discussion, we'll try to refer back to these different areas. I'm here to talk about a land exchange that is a benefit to the water reclamation facility. So under Public Works, we operate a water reclamation facility, and as part of that, we have future property that we intend to use in the future for land application of treated water out on the prairie. And one of those parcels is parcel 1 here. That's 80 acres. And we are proposing to exchange parcel 1 for parcels 2, 3, and 4. You'll see that there is also a parcel 5 on this map. That is not part of the exchange. That will not change hands. But as part of the purchase and sale agreement for us to acquire the property and trade our property toward that, there are requested annexations and zoning to make the property useful for the developers. So that was all bundled into a purchase and sale agreement, and the requested zoning, the annexations, and the land exchange are all contingent on approval of each other. So if the land exchange doesn't move forward, the zoning requests and those things don't move forward. If the zoning is not suitable within the purchase and sale agreement, that nullifies the land exchange itself. So far, following what I'm saying, there's more details on future slides. So again, we would be exchanging parcel 1, which is 80 acres, for parcels 2, 3, and 4. If I recall correctly, that is 178 acres, so we get a net
Combined?
increase. Combined,
Okay.
yes. So it is a 98-acre increase in property, and we currently own 960 acres on the property, on the prairie. That's outlined in green. Rathdrum owns another 314 acres. That's outlined in green hatch there. And those properties together form the land application property that we will use into the future. What you can see on the right-hand graphic is what the boundaries would look like when they're adjusted. You see the western boundary of all the property shifts slightly to the east, and then the green is, if I can get the mouse to work here, green increases to go around the new yellow parcels, so the 3 triangles. And that brings the total acreage Post Falls would own to 1,058, and again, that's not counting the Rathdrum acreage. So to recap that, the land exchange and what is in that purchase and sale agreement, the city would convey to Jacqueline Land Company 80 acres and slightly over $2.1 million. In exchange, we would get 178.22 acres. So again, a 98-acre increase. And we're proposing to zone that public reserve for land application of treated wastewater into the future. That exchange, like I said, is contingent upon the annexations and requested zoning. So talking a little bit about the benefits to the water reclamation facility. Why am I here talking about land exchange? We own a water reclamation facility. The city owns one, and with it we clean water and return it to the Spokane River. We specifically remove phosphorus. That's one of the tighter limits we have at the water reclamation facility. And although we are upgrading that facility as we speak to remove phosphorus down to the parts per billion level, as flows increase into that facility, even at the parts per billion level, we'll be putting more than 3 pounds of phosphorus per day into the river, which is what our permit limit will be. So we will have to send some of that water somewhere else with its minuscule amount of phosphorus. And what the city has selected as part of our future-looking master plan is to send that water to land application properties. So as I mentioned, we have a long-term water reclamation facility plan. The plan we're operating under was approved in 2013, and it identified a need for 582 additional acres on top of the, I think it was 800 some acres we had at the time. So the reason we're here with this proposed exchange is this is a unique opportunity for us to make a pretty sizable dent in that 582 acres. We don't have a lot of options to purchase 98 acres anywhere on the prairie. We certainly don't have a lot of options to purchase it for $2 million. So the history of that 582 is we partially offset some of it with the community forest purchase. That's got about 200 irrigable acres, so we can put water on trees in the forest. We partially offset it with the school district land exchange about 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And that gained us 10 acres, so not a huge dent in 582, certainly not 100 acres like we're talking about tonight. And that 582 could be offset with agreements to irrigate parks or golf courses or things like that. We're somewhat counting on that, honestly, but that's complicated. You have to get a pipe to each park that you send it to, which is basically building another water distribution system. So having this all contiguous is a cost benefit to future construction. In conclusion, we need more acreage for the water reclamation land application program. Which brings us back to this. As I mentioned, it's a benefit to have things contiguous. As you can see, adding parcels 2, 3, and 4 keep the land clustered together. The parcel 1 is also contiguous. We'd love to keep it, but just financial realities, this is how we can gain some more acreage. The reason we're able to trade a smaller amount of acres for a larger amount of acreage is you can develop the 80 acres more readily than you can the other parcels. going back through these slides, just kind of recapping where we've been. And then some considerations for the land exchange itself. So it was mentioned there are 3 topics at hand tonight, and we'll really need 3 decisions from you as council. One of those independently is the land exchange. Some things to think about, pro and con. The properties remain contiguous. We really wouldn't bring you a land exchange if the properties were disjointed across the prairie. It becomes inefficient to build to it. I will note the Thompson piece, or parcel number 4, will require a future irrigation investment from the city. We identified that when we were doing our research after the purchase and sale agreement. In 2022 dollars, that was about $200,000. So basically you can tack that onto the long-term purchase price of the property for doing your value math. That's not, again, going to drastically increase the price per acre, and we're comfortable with that price. I just want to highlight that, so you guys know I'm doing my job, doing due diligence. The purchase would be funded from dedicated wastewater funds, so it's not coming out of tax dollars, it's coming out of ratepayer dollars and cap fees that have been set aside for building future facilities. And the net cost of that, excluding the future irrigation piece, is $22,187 per acre. We recently purchased 14.5 acres for close to $1 million. I think that's about 3 times this purchase price. Not saying that was a bad deal. I'm saying this is a very good deal for current real estate. And then, as I mentioned, our plan calls for obtaining 582 acres. Rough math is this would bring us to about 314 of that. So that's some rough approximations. So counting forested acres that can be irrigated as the same. I mentioned there are contingencies in that purchase and sale agreement, and that's what the next 2 portions of the public hearings are for. So some of those are for rezoning, and John will talk more about this, but we would rezone the 80 acres the city owns, or we're proposing to rezone it, from public reserve, which is what we had it zoned as for the land application, to residential mixed. We would propose zoning the 3 new parcels, 2, 3, and 4, as public reserve. Again, that matches our needs for land application. And then there's a mix of zoning for the parcel 5. And I'll let John and the applicants talk more about that. So the other contingency is that the new property that's under discussion would be annexed into the city. So that includes parcels 2 through 5, basically. Parcel 1's already in the city, but the remaining parcels would require being annexed for the deal to move forward. And we're back to the map. I thought this would be a good place to pause and ask if there's any questions.
Questions, John?
I had a quick question on the 582 acres. That is the goal to have for land application. In what period of time is that achievable?
When can we get to 582? Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking?
In a perfect world, when would you want to be there?
In the facility plan, it suggested 2023 would be a great time to have
Wow.
that property acquired. So
Well, hopefully here we
we're
are.
making dents in it, but it is challenging financially, and it's just
Yeah.
challenging to find property that folks are willing to sell in general. So I think we're about, we would be a little over halfway there at this point. But the facility plan said basically purchase the property sooner at better prices and have it in your pocket for later when you need it, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you.
In a nutshell, what's the extra work that has to be done in parcel 4?
Parcel 4 has a well we can use for a while, and then that well goes away. So we either need to drill a new well for parcel 4 or connect it to a well we own at the south center of this parcel. It's up in the air which one of those would be less expensive, but we have options to do it.
So it's a well replacement, basically.
It's a well replacement,
Okay.
and we have water rights that come with the property, so we would have the water rights to drill the well, we just need a physical well to pump it out of. And there would be temporary use of an existing well.
Question about capacities of the water treatment plant. With the current capacity plus the expansion opportunity with the technology that we're using now to remove the phosphorus, how soon will it necessitate us to meet our discharge criteria to need to have this sizable piece of land application?
That is a great question. I have some of the information to answer it for you. So growth rates are a big factor there in terms of years. If we assume similar growth rates, I think we're looking between, I don't know, call it 10 and 20 years when we need to start doing land application at a smaller scale. And as growth continues, that ramps up to more and more land application. That also assumes that the treatment technology we're installing today, our membrane filtration and our tertiary clarifiers, perform the same way they did in the pilot tests, which they should when you scale them up, but I'm sure it will be different. I just don't know if it's 5% better or worse, which obviously changes your answers. It's not going to be 50% better or worse, but it'll be slightly different than what the pilot test said. So rough round numbers, I would say between 10 and 20 years we start doing land application because we have to. We'll probably try to have it in place before then, just that's good planning.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
John, when does the, I know it took forever to get the current permit approved. How long does that, what's the term of that? When does it expire?
That's a great question. Our current permit was approved in 2014. It's a 5-year permit. So it expired in 2019. We applied for a renewal and successfully applied for a renewal. They said, keep using your old permit until we get around to issuing you a new permit. We're currently in semi-final negotiations for what that new permit looks like. And it, in terms of phosphorus, in terms of what affects this conversation, it looks very similar.
Well, the reason I ask the question is because it takes a long time, as you just stated, to get a permit approved. When we look at the requirements and limitations that are being placed upon us as to what we can and cannot discharge, at one point, I know several years ago when we talked about this, it was a matter of they were holding us to a level that was not scientifically attainable. My concern is, should that arise again, I would really like to see us be in a position that we could then land apply without having them eliminate our ability to utilize the river.
It certainly adds flexibility to where we can go with our future operations.
Any questions?
What kind of infrastructure is required to do the land application out there?
It's relatively simple, but it's relatively expensive. So a giant pump at our treatment facility to move the water about 6 miles out to this location, and a pipe to carry it. That's the expensive part. And then the application equipment itself is the same irrigation equipment that is being used to farm it today. So some of this is served by a pivot. I believe parcel 2 is part of a pivot irrigation system. Some of it has wheel lines, and we would probably add some irrigation in the corners so we can get even more water on it. But it's the same irrigation equipment you see with any farm.
Do we have right-of-way to get it out there without having to purchase additional right-of-way?
Getting into future projects, we've actually got on the books plans to get a simple design so we can basically make an easement to ourselves. But the plan is to put it in city roads, so we would have right-of-way. It's just a matter of navigating the spaghetti of other infrastructure that's out there today.
Got it.
Okay.
Is having the railroad that runs through there going to affect anything we do?
That's a good question, and the short answer is yes. Anytime you've got a railroad running through your property, it affects your operations. The longer answer is we can work around it, and we're going into it with eyes open. So there are easements with the railroad for water to pass underneath both between parcel 2 and parcel 3 and parcel 4 and parcel 5, which is a benefit to us. We can move water back and forth between the parcels. As I mentioned, parcel 5 is not part of what will be our property, but there is a current line that goes under there. So likely what it is slightly less efficient operations for whoever has to get in a car and drive around the track instead of being able to hop over it. But we can move water back and forth between the two, and that's really the important part. Good question.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So now going into the zone change review criteria, once again, just reminding that the Planning and Zoning Commission, they did the recommendation on the zoning element, and then we'll be reviewing the actual decision on the annexation and zoning at City Council. Another note, I'll be, as I go through this, trying to stay consistent on this review criteria, addressing from the west to the east. So it'll go from the North Crown, which is out west proposal, to the Thompson Satchwell that's out east. But the first criteria are the amendments to the zoning map in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use map. So on this map, you can see here this big sea of transitional that's north of all the colors. That's how our current comp plan addressed growth, is because the timing of that growth was undetermined, had no idea what was going to come forward in the future, and then it focused the guidance to focus areas, divvied Post Falls up into areas, so if needed, we could tailor different sections differently with different policies. The stars there you see, that's the North Crown site out west. The eastern star, that's the Thompson piece with the mixed zones that's been mentioned, which will go in further detail. And then the land app site, which you've seen highlighted yellow before, they're green at those locations. Focus areas go out west to the Central Prairie focus area. And you can see that's where that star was out west. That's the North Crown zone change. A school adjacent to the west, and you can see the land app that would be to the east, the darker green. That's the proposed 113.7 acres, which would be the area 2 and 3 on your handout. Over to the east, you can see the proposed zoning, the CCM. Along the Highway 41, the R2, and then the proposed R1 with that public reserve on the north side of the track. That would be area 4 and 5. Note that in the development agreement, there is a restriction for the northern part of that CCM to be about 15.5 acres for that multifamily. So once again, going to the west, to the North Crown, the Central Prairie, looking at guidance on its focus area. One that it's highlighted is support provisions for a variety of housing types and densities. This is the proposed housing layout and mixed zoning. So in the residential mix, part of the makeup of it being mixed is you're allowed to request up to 10% of the zone to be neighborhood commercial, up to 20% being multifamily, and then there really is no limit on the amount of single family that can be embodied in that agreement. This one here, with the neighborhood commercial being at 1 acre max, in that development agreement, that comes about 1.3%. And the 8.3 acres of that multifamily you see on that northern end, that would be right around 10% of the 80 acres. One of the things that was kind of identified is you look at this map and initially you're like, whoa, there's a single road running through this from the north to the east. The reason why that's depicted in the development agreement the way it is to put teeth into some assurances that it's clearly identified that the major road, Spokane Street, that we will get a major road going from the south to the north, so from Bodine to Hayden Avenue. Internally, we have design policies and spacing requirements for the road network that as phases came in and if they subdivided, you would end up getting connectivity, meeting our spacing standards within Post Falls Municipal Code and otherwise adopted. And in that, you can see though, the question was looking for a variety of housing types. You can see that the proposal is to put some mixed housing type in that.
Question for you, John?
Yep.
If I remember correctly, in that focus area, it states that the multifamily should be focused around Prairie Avenue, is that correct?
It says, yeah, focus multifamily along Prairie Avenue.
Okay.
It doesn't preclude potential other areas. There's other goals and policies that say that you'd want your multifamily along some major roadways. So other arterial roadways would also meet other goals and policies, correct?
Yeah, I understand it's not a dictate, I just wanted to make sure my memory was serving me.
Yeah, that's that first one right there.
Oh, there it is, yep. Thank you.
Now going to the east, the Thompson piece, looking at that proposal there with the CCM. 3 of these focus provisions for multifamily, commercial, and tech uses near higher classified roadways, which Highway 41 would be considered as a principal arteria, a major roadway that would be near those uses. Development should provide pedestrian connectivity to all multi-use paths, trails, including the Prairie Trail. So with this, if this was to develop, you would get the improvements along the north side of Hayden Avenue. Rob, he might be able to speak to where the multi-use trails, if there's on both, but there would be some trail connectivity along the Hayden Avenue. Prairie Trail, which runs through the tech park, which is to the south of this, staff is looking as that develops to get some connectivity from Hayden Avenue to that multi-use trail. To Prairie Trail. So with that, you would gain connectivity to that Prairie Trail through time. The other one highlighted is focus provisions for commercial uses along the arterial collector streets where traffic volumes exceed 4,000 vehicles today, which I believe would be the case there with Highway 41. Second criteria, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. So we'll be spending a lot of time in this section for a while because there's some goals and policies we got to sort through. So goal 5, keep Post Falls neighborhood safe, vital, and attractive. Safe, so looking out west, I don't think I have that map up, but with that Spokane Street going north-south, connecting Bodine to Hayden Avenue would create some connectivity through that, increased circulation, create different opportunities through Crown Point. Right now, there's one that's from Bodine all the way to Prairie. There's 2 ways out, and that's a southerly direction. So with development through time, with the school district, and with this, you would get diversified access. Looking out east at the Thompson piece, you would get improved roadway along Hayden Avenue. Vital, with planned schools nearby, the rezone area, that would provide additional housing near the school. So oftentimes when you have residents near schools, that promotes walkability, less reliance on busing, and promotes some sense of place with those communities with the schools nearby. Out east, you have a tech park, which I'll kind of show later on, but you could potentially provide housing near the tech park to the south, a place of employment, and or the commercial services along Highway 41 provide residents nearby as well. Attractive, that part of this goal. We do have commercial and multifamily design standards within our municipal code. Plus, we also have in the development agreements some different criteria that provide improved standards than we have typically in our municipal code. For example, the multifamily in both the North Crown and in the Thompson piece, the minimum, I don't have the exact language, but it's about 2.25 parking stalls per unit or as otherwise approved at the time. So what that does, that's a 0.25 increase from our typical, which is 2. So it will provide additional parking on site than our code does currently. Goal 6, maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace and in concert with the need of the plan. Policy 2 is coming up, and then I'm going to have Rob come up, talk a little bit more in detail on the transportation of both pieces and how it meets that goal and other policies. Plan for and establish types of quantity of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. I kind of touched base a little bit of that on the diversified housing for North Crown, as well as some of the diversity in zoning and the potential product type for the Thompson Satchwell. Goal 8, protect and maintain Post Falls natural resources, including clean air, soils, rivers, and aquifer, and minimizing light, noise, pollution citywide. One may view the increased land application and open space of those areas as meeting that goal. Protect and enhance Post Falls scenic and natural areas for present and future generations. What I just stated may also apply to that goal as well. Provide and support Post Falls parks and recreation opportunities on pace with growth. Oftentimes that's addressed through, it was mentioned already, impact fees. You collect impact fees, and that allows the Parks Department to manage and purchase land in areas they see need to fit some maybe their regional or citywide deficiencies. Now going on to policies. Maintain or enhance community level of service. Foster long-term fiscal health of the community. I think John touched base of that a little bit on the land exchange, on how that fiscally makes some sense from their perspective from managing the wastewater facility. Maintain and enhance residential quality of life. On this particular one, this does provide, you see some parks there. The parks open space, the 5 acres minimum, that's embedded in that development agreement. Want to reiterate, these development agreements, they get tied to the land through time, so even if portions sell, they get recorded against title and they run with the land through time. The development agreement on this is set up so within each phase of the development, they need to keep a continuous balance of 7% open space. Promote compatible, well-designed development. So once again, looking at this with the diversified housing, with the Bodine connection in the school nearby, one may deduce that that would be well-designed, having open space, continuous open space. To mention our PUDs, some of our better subdivisions have been developed historically with PUDs. That provides a 10% open space. Now, the calculations of that was different at the time. It nets out similar to a 7% the way we define it now. PUDs used to not have a definition of open space, so at times parking lots were included, drainage wells were included. We kind of, Warren and I discussed that, and we kind of refined that, so those weren't included, but we went to a 7%. So, so similarly, some of that open space requirement would help with that, with some of those amenities nearby. Moving on to policy 2. You would apply and revise zoning designations with careful considerations of the following factors. One of them is the future land use mapping, which I kind of went through, the transitional and the focus areas a bit. Compatibility with surrounding land uses. So looking at this, actually, I may have. So out west, to the south of this, you got Crown Point. And if you look at this, it looks very similar to Crown Point a little bit from the proposed land uses. You don't see the lots platted, but they are proposing single-family lots, very similar to the single-family lots south of Bodine. They are planning for some open space. Crown Point does have some multifamily. There's the multifamily there for this proposal. It is along Hayden Avenue, which is a major road. The parking that was at Crown Point, that was in Smart Code, and that was at 1.5 cars per unit. The idea of Smart Code is more of an urban code, and so I don't think it was an unintentional mishap with the ideology of Smart Code a bit, and it was applied in more of a rural area, and so the 1.5 parking stalls may not have been the best for that site, but some other sites that have gone through our typical 2-point 0 parking stalls per unit have majority perform better. So this being proposed, like I said, in that 2.25 goes above and beyond what our current code says too. But looking at the compatibility, you got, once again, the school to the west that I mentioned. You got the subdivision to the south, and around it you have other county single-family lots, albeit they are larger egg lots, but they're in the county in the nearby vicinity, single-family. The proposed public reserve, essentially the Satchwell piece, adjacent to the west is other public reserves. So this would be contiguous with that and be applied for land app. Looking out east, you got the public reserve north of the track, adjacent to the public reserve to the west. And then looking at the compatibility of the surrounding zoning with the Thompson, I highlighted the orange area. That's that mentioned 15.5 acre restricted area in the development agreement that only would allow multifamily in that area. So they wouldn't be able to apply for a site plan or development in that, where you see that red for multifamily. They would be strictly placing it where that's identified orange area is. The R2 there sits behind that commercial with the R1 sitting behind the R2. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that typical planning philosophy is you go along your major corridors and you stick your higher intense uses along those. For a few reasons, they end up being more intense uses, commercial or multifamily. They're taller buildings. Along your busier roadways, you get light, noise, and air pollution. A lot of that gets emitted, like sound, omnidirectional, and those taller buildings help buffer that and screen that from your other nearby lower intense neighborhoods, as well as they kind of assist in blocking some of the light pollution as well from the major roadways. Now, they may have some of their own inherent, but we got some design standards in multifamily regulating the height of the pedestal lighting and whatnot. And then it transitions from those higher intense uses to your less intense uses. I mentioned earlier in some of the policies, this may provide and could provide additional housing and complementary services to the tech park that you see there in blue. The blue areas. So this is a more zoomed out picture, but what you see in blue is the tech mix development agreement. There's a development agreement that regulates the areas in dark blue being more industrial-esque in nature, so more your job creator type uses in those. The areas that you see in the blue and red, just west of Highway 41 and then south of the industrial, those are more of your, they can do more of your typical mix of commercial and industrial type stuff. So that's along 41. In red, that is just your commercial. So you're potentially placing these rooftops along places of employment, and you can see how it transitions at that location. Looking at development patterns and how things develop, zooming out, looking west of 41, you see predominantly the plan is commercial along the west side of Highway 41 with your medium to higher densities backing up the commercial and going into the residential. Areas 1, 2, and 3, we do not have applications for development at this time for those areas. These are different than the 1, 2, 3 that you have there. These are just looking at potential future growth areas. One could presume that they would match what's currently on the east side and that in the west side of, once again, commercial along your main corridors, industrial, medium to higher densities, backing behind it, transitioning to your lesser intensities. And that's what the Thompson Satchwell would be mirroring, that same pattern that you see to the south as well as what's anticipated on the east side of 41. Kind of that's an exhaustive explanation of compatibility for both the two areas. The other one is the other two, which I would have Rob Paulus come up and speak to, and that is the infrastructure and service plans and the existing and future traffic patterns and how the proposed developments may be consistent with master planning.
Good evening, members of council. Rob Pauls, Assistant City Engineer. There we go. In discussion for how this area is compatible with our traffic plans in the master planning, Hayden Avenue, Chase Road, and in the middle, which isn't shown, is Idaho Street, about halfway between Chase and Greens Ferry, are all major collector roadways. These roadways are intended to handle traffic volumes between 4,000 to 12,000 vehicles per day. That's their capacity. That doesn't mean that's how much traffic is going to be on them, but that's what we build them to be able to grow into and be able to handle long term. Spokane Street itself is south of the zone change area down to Prairie Avenue is classified as a minor collector roadway. These we tend to see 1,000 to 4,000 vehicle trips per day on. Back in 2010, when Crown Point came into the city of Post Falls, the city's master plan at that time had Spokane Street running all the ways through to Hayden Avenue as a minor collector. When we did the 2018 update, the portion north of Crown Point was removed from the transportation master plan because that area was shown as land application and we were not thinking that we would need to continue the road through. So we've built the road for Spokane Street south of this site as a minor collector. We see that if this area is going to develop as single family with a little bit of multifamily on it, that continuing Spokane Street through as a minor collector would be the best route. It handles a little bit more traffic than a typical single-family road, but it can also be designed to continue to be a 25-mile-per-hour roadway, such as it is through the Crown Point subdivision. We would utilize things such as a curvilinear design, which is what the applicant is generally showing. That's not locked in place. That doesn't happen until we get to the subdivision standpoint. And do things such as little curb knuckles at intersections to reduce the roadway at the intersection to visually cause traffic to slow down. Also encouraging on-street parking in those areas also helps keep traffic down closer to the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit and not encouraging like a straight through shot and seeing people doing 30, 35 miles per hour. The project also borders Bodine Avenue on the south. Bodine is also identified as a minor collector roadway, and that would feed traffic from just east of Idaho Street over to Chase and continuing to the west. The benefit to this project is the development of Bodine as a minor collector, one, gives traffic in this area, both in the proposed zone change as well as the Crown Point subdivision, alternate routes on how to get to our collectors and our arterials. They can head east and west, west serving the school if they have children that they want to drive there, or they can get to Chase Road or head north, get to Hayden Avenue and utilize those routes as alternative routes, either heading towards Spokane or to Coeur d'Alene. Yes, there's traffic that will utilize Spokane Street, but it'll be a percentage of the traffic and it will not be designed to be an encouraged through route for traffic from Hayden Avenue to shortcut all the ways down to the freeway. In terms of infrastructure for service in the area, water in that area is the East Green Acres Irrigation District. Sanitary sewer would be the city of Post Falls. We do have infrastructure in Crown Point. It has some limited capacity for it at this time. At this time, the infrastructure in Crown Point feeds to a lift station south of Prairie and then is pumped to another lift station. The city's master plan indicates the need for a large regional line which would be running just to the east of the zone change area and then south to Prairie. We built a portion of that line in Prairie Avenue last year with the Prairie and Spokane Street roundabout, and the rest of that line, which would go from Prairie Avenue over to Chase, down to Fisher Avenue, basically about another mile to get to the Fisher lift station. The Fisher lift station is going to be upgraded in the next couple of years, and then the gravity line in Chase and connecting to the dry line we put in is anticipated either in the next couple of years or slightly longer than that. So a restriction on that zone. If they were to develop today, if it was approved, there would be a limitation as to how many homes could be built in their initial phase, and that the future phases would be reliant upon, one, the Fisher Avenue lift station being upgraded, which again is anticipated to be online by the end of 2025, and then the completion of the gravity main in Chase Road and connecting up into the line that we recently constructed in Prairie Avenue. So really quick synopsis. Any main questions on infrastructure or transportation?
Questions, Rob?
Quick question on the rights-of-way for Bodine, or do we have those for the north and south side of Bodine?
On Bodine, we collected from the Crown Point subdivision when they went in. They dedicated the rights-of-way for the half road plus 10 feet. And they also cashed out their road construction cost for that piece along the north edge of Crown Point. At the present time, we do not have rights-of-way going all the ways out to Chase Road. However, with the school site, when that would develop, they would be responsible for building the roadway at the center line plus 10.
For the north side?
For the north side, and then we would collect the remainder in the future. Since Bodine is a minor collector, we're looking at a roadway that's around a little over 50 feet in width. So you're 25 plus 10, 35 feet wide, which is wider than a normal residential street. A normal residential street's down at 32. So it's enough room to handle two-way traffic. You'd have a pedestrian facility on one side, but not initially on both.
So we would need to obtain rights-of-way from that landowner on the south side?
On the south side, ultimately, yes. So it'd be a question of, does that landowner on the south come into the city and want to develop prior to the time frame that the school wants to develop? Do they happen simultaneously? Or do we get into a situation that, the school develops and we make do with a partial roadway, centerline plus 10? We usually would anticipate that we're going to have to make do with centerline plus 10 initially. Yes.
Go.
So sewer from the north Crown Point, the future school would also be served by that same infrastructure?
Yes. When I said there's be a limitation on the development, the limitation on the development takes into consideration we've reserved a little bit of that remaining capacity in the line in Crown Point, so that if the school came in next week and said we want to develop on that site, we could serve a school today and still have that amount that we identified in the development agreement for this property to develop up to a point.
That's the part I was missing. As far as water services, that's not City of Post Falls, correct?
That is correct. That's East Green Acres.
But would the improvements to the water system and this development also serve that school?
That it,
Or is that not for us to answer?
that's not exactly for us to answer. If the school came in, depending upon the infrastructure that East Green Acres has, they would be able to serve it off of Chase Road. But if the school was to develop first, they would also more than likely, utilizing the methodology we utilize, and it's fairly similar, we would anticipate that they would require the school to run a line down Chase Road to be ready for this other piece, and that ultimately they get looped together to make sure they have good circulation and proper flows for domestic use as well as fire.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
Joe, thanks for clarifying the provider for water for this area versus the east area. Okay, so, yes, what we're doing right now is looking at the last one, goals and policies in the comprehensive plans and related master plans. So by this discussion, we're addressing that part of policy too. Policy 15, ensure that adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages, incomes, and ability through provisions of diverse housing types and price levels. Going back to this one, I believe the proposed diversity in zoning that's being proposed would meet that intent. Oftentimes, even with just single family, we get diversified. Currently, what the market is, it is a little bit different than like 5 years ago, but I think diversification is key in attempting to meet that element of that policy. Work to improve street connectivity in all areas of Post Falls, improving walkability, public health and safety, and transportation efficiency. I believe that's been discussed with Spokane Street, Bodine, Hayden Avenue. Policy 33, annexation should help implement Post Falls transportation plans, enabling a completion and preserving continuity and circulation patterns, the roads and pedestrian connections. That's why I had Rob come up on policy 2, so we'd already addressed that. Policy 45, guide annexation decisions by considering the master plans for water, sewer, transportation, parks, schools, and emergency services. Provisions for necessary rights-of-way and easements, which we generally get at the time of annexation. Studies that evaluate environmental and public service factors, the timing and support orderly development and coordination and extension of public services. I think in the development agreement, you see the timing is different between that which is the Thompson piece, as it's anticipated to be developed at a later date, so there's contingencies built into that development agreement, versus the one at the west. There I am violating my west-east. But the North Crown, you see that one being done in a shorter period of time. The contingency is different in that development agreement. And then looking at the goals and policies, which we're doing right now. Promote and planting and the protection of trees citywide. And in that, there's the look to beautify and enhance community value, provide shade and comfort, affirm in the city's association outdoors and historic origins, and provide wildlife habitat. Potentially with the preservation of additional 98 acres would provide some habitat and natural wildlife for some species out in that area. So that kind of wraps up that criteria 2. The following ones should be a little quicker of a conversation. But zoning is assigned following considerations of street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic natural features, all to encourage a balance of land uses to help Post Falls remain a desirable, stable, sustainable community. I believe through the discussions of everything previous, we've addressed this criteria. Commercial and high-intensity residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. So this is where you see out west, you have, where we do have the higher intense uses, it is along Hayden Avenue. So the design of this and the proposal is meeting that review criteria. Similarly, when you go out east along Highway 41, you see, as mentioned before, the intense uses along 41 transitioning away to the west. The 5th criteria looks at limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density, proceeding further away from the urban areas. 41 is your urban corridor. The proposed single-family area and neighborhood commercial area, and the majority of that lesser intense is further away from your more urban center of Post Falls, be it Seltice Way or 41. And then with the, like I just mentioned, the more intense uses along Highway 41. So the proposal would meet that criteria, more or less. Then looking at the criteria 6, looking at the industrial zoning, and there's none being asked, so that really wouldn't be applicable. Here's agencies as routed. Yellowstone Pipeline, they had no comment. Panhandle Health District, no comments. DEQ, they had more or less just time of construction, environmental concern comments. Highway District, they did have some, if there's any questions on their ask here, Rob is here to kind of delineate this. I believe he met with them and they mitigated their concerns. He's nodding his head yes, so that's been addressed. Kootenai County Fire, once again, they reserved their issues at the time of development. School District, they said that the proposed RM zoning for north of Crown Point subdivision would complement the school district's plans for future school facilities on the district's owned land to the west. Any questions for me?
Questions, Mr.
regarding
Manley,
the
at this
proposed
point?
zoning?
I see none.
All right.
Applicant wishes to speak.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tag Jacqueline. I'm the manager of Jacqueline Land Company. We are the co-applicant tonight. And along with me tonight representing Jacqueline Land Company is Ray Kimball of Whipple Consulting Engineers. You'll hear from him a little bit later on in our presentation. So before we dive into the details tonight, I just kind of wanted to take a step back and share some background on my family's history, first of all, and also highlight a few projects showing our long-standing and continued investment in this community. Also give a brief overview of the company and our development philosophy. I will as well present some additional background on this unique opportunity that we're presenting tonight. So with that, first of all, I think it's important to note, so I'm actually a Post Falls native. I represent the fourth generation of a family company and a family that's been a part of the Spokane Valley and the Rathdrum Prairie now going on over 80 years. My mother, my aunt, my uncles, several of my cousins and their children are actively engaged throughout this community. For newer residents or those unfamiliar with our area's history, Jacqueline Seed Company was a mainstay at the Post Falls community for decades, and it relied heavily on the Rathdrum Prairie's bluegrass seed production for its global grass seed business. When Jacqueline Land Company voluntarily phased out field burning due to public pressure, it was inevitable that what was once a profitable and thriving agricultural Rathdrum Prairie would transform. And although our family business has evolved and sought new opportunities in the ensuing years, one thing will never change, and that's our commitment to being good land stewards while also maintain the vibrant community that makes Post Falls a wonderful place to live, work, and play in. We live, work, and play here, and we have always taken a thoughtful, measured approach to land development. I incorporated this photo. It's actually my grandfather, and it's taken about 40 years ago. That's Arden Jacqueline. I thought it was just kind of cool. That's him giving a public presentation, and you may not be able to see what he's pointing at, but that's actually the Rathdrum Prairie kind of state line area. And I just wanted to kind of get that in there because I think it's kind of cool, just showing the long-standing connection and commitment to this area, and that plans for things like this have really been in the works for decades. So on this next slide, I just kind of wanted to go over, just highlight a few of the community, what I call community investments that my family has made. So starting in 1989, we donated the Jacqueline Building in the Cooney County Fairgrounds. 1994, donated 3 acres in Riverbend Commerce Park to North Idaho College, which is now home to the Workforce Training Center in Riverbend. 1997, we donated 20 acres of Riverbend Commerce Park to the University of Idaho, which is now home to the University of Idaho Research Park. In 1998, we led the preservation and revitalization of the old church, which now is called the Jacqueline Arts and Cultural Center, right next to City Hall here. In 2010, we donated funds to restore and preserve the historic Rathdrum Jail. 2015, donated 7.3 acres to the Idaho Division of Veteran Services for the first Idaho State Veterans Home in North Idaho, which opened here in Post Falls in 2022. And last year in 2022, we donated through a bargain sale 11 acres for the newly founded Kootenai Classical Academy, also out on the Rathdrum Prairie. So again, I just wanted to put that in there just to kind of highlight a few of the things that my family's done, just again, show our dedication and commitment to this community. And as far as a developer, I believe our existing developments, both Riverbend Commerce Park and the new Haycrop Commercial Park, those are great examples of projects that we want to create. And we see every project that we create as part of our family legacy, and we want it to be something we're proud of and put our name behind. So, and now you might be wondering, so how did this happen? How did we get here tonight? So the original concept of this opportunity we're presenting really originated from kind of a light bulb moment, driving along Hayden Avenue, seeing the school property along Chase, and kind of thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a residential neighborhood up against a school site or school's site? And, in general, having residential neighborhoods next to schools creates a better sense of community, safety for children. It's simply just proper planning. And beyond that, we thought it made more sense to develop there than developing some of our more remote properties. So we took this initial concept to city staff, and through many discussions and meetings with both the city and the school district, here we are today. So just kind of wrap things up here on my end. I'm honestly excited to present this opportunity to the city and to the community. As Ray will explain in a bit more detail, we see this as an opportunity to develop where development belongs, as well as preserving 98 acres of open prairie space. And the proposed subdivision on Parcel 1, North Crown, as I mentioned, would place housing adjacent to planned school locations on property already owned by the school district. Again, preservation of open prairie land is something that I hope everyone agrees is important. And I'm hopeful that tonight we can preserve these 98 acres of farm prairie open space. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ray. Thank you.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, Ray Kimball for the record. So I'll dive into this. John did a fantastic job in really going through the detail. I don't really want to, my slides kind of reiterate a lot of it. But as you see here, we've got the North Crown, the Satchwell, and the Thompson properties. So they're in the dark green up there. So the dark green represents the City of Post Falls' current land application area. The light green is the City of Raftram's land application area. And the blue is, of course, the Jacqueline property as it exists today. So as we move through this, if this land exchange happens, the North Crown property there goes from green to blue. The north part of the Thompson property on the east side there goes from blue to green. And then the Satchwell property goes from blue to green as well. And that nets a 98-acre gross increase into the city's land application area. You've heard this many, many times tonight already. So with regards to the existing zoning and what is proposed, so we've got, that's the existing and that's proposed. So we have on the, let's see if I can get the mouse here to work. There we go. That location there, that is North Crown, that'd be residential mixed. This area right here is the Satchwell property, areas 2 and 3. Areas 2 and 3, and 3 and 4? I don't know. I got them mixed up. 2 and 3. Thank you. Satchwell property, that is public reserve. And then over here, we've got the North Crown property, which ends up being public reserve. And then we have the 3 zonings here. We have the R1, the R2, and the CCM, the commercial mixed, which has a strictly commercial component on the southern part and then a potential for a multifamily component on the northern part. Of course, 98 acres being preserved. So these are the locations. You've seen this. So we got some aerial photos in this, and I really want to talk a little bit about Crown Point, or the North Crown, and how we were really, really intentional with what we did with the zoning and how we're proposing the zoning. We understand that, so the comprehensive plan says you put any sort of higher intensity uses on a higher type of roadway. So a collector street, an arterial street. Now we could have put it at the intersection of Spokane Street and Hayden, but we didn't. And there's a reason for that. It's because we didn't want the traffic from that part of the development to funnel down Spokane Street. We wanted them to have to go through a neighborhood network and neighborhood streets if they wanted to get to Spokane Street, or more conveniently, just go straight out to Hayden Avenue. And so that was very intentional in what we did. It was also very intentional that we have the parks spaced out where they are, that it's right next to the school district property. We have the single family, of course, there'll be a road network in there for neighborhood connectivity. All of our best, in my opinion, I think all of our best subdivisions here in our community, Montrose, Fieldstone, Foxtail, they all have elementary schools all mixed in with them. So they're part of that. Having a school out in the middle of a field, I get why the school district bought it. They needed land. That was the only thing they could get. And then they did a swap with you guys, and it's in a great spot. But this makes it better. How does it make it better when it comes to the school? Well, it gets utilities to the school. It puts kids who are going to go to those schools in close proximity to those schools. It reduces busing. Kids can walk to school. It provides an opportunity for the kids in the existing Crown Point neighborhood to just walk right up to the school site instead of having to get bused to a different school somewhere else, or even just bus all the way down and around. because there's no pedestrian network to get from there to the school site. So, in moving forward, I think I went the wrong way. So here, this is the Satchwell property. No, we haven't really talked about it that much, but what you can see is in the light green in the middle is the Satchwell, so areas 2 and 3. You got the railroad bisecting it. One of the questions earlier tonight was, is that an issue? There's an existing pipe that goes underneath the railroad tracks. It's currently being used today for the irrigation system, and so they're connected. So it's actually really, really convenient that the city would be using this for land application and irrigation. They'd be able to use that existing crossing, not have to have any expense to get irrigation water back and forth. And of course, you can see in the background there, you know, these really do show a really good perspective of how immense the land application area is out there on the prairie. Seeing these little squares on a map on a page don't really do them justice. That's a lot of land out there. And then moving to the North Thompson. So this photo is taken on the northwest corner looking southwest towards Coeur d'Alene. So you can see the Union Pacific Railroad bisects it right in the very apex in the center of that photo is the Hayden and Highway 41 intersection. And just to the right-hand side of this area right here is the existing city land application area. This photo taken from the southwest corner gives you a pretty good perspective of what the zonings would look like as proposed. We have the R1 zone right here, which takes up the western half of the property. We have the R2 zone. And then as we get more intense in use, as we get closer to Highway 41, we've got the CCM commercial part. And then you might be wondering why we have the multifamily up here instead of just straight commercial. And one of the reasons why is that one of the things that's really, really important for successful commercial businesses and successful commercial development is access. And access is limited on Highway 41, and especially in this location, because if you've driven out there in the last couple of years, you'll notice that there's a bridge over the railroad, and so there's no really good access right there. So it's better to have something where we have residential in that location, and then that gives us the ability to have, so with this concept, we have multifamily, we've got R2, we've got R1. We have the ability to hit the entire gamut of the city's residential needs, workforce housing, single family housing, which complements the commercial uses that will be in the corner. Very, very important. Not only that, but I've even talked about it, but you've got the purple over here. That's the existing tech park, or the existing tech park, or not the existing, tech park zone, hopefully future tech park. And so this provides housing for that just across the street. So with regards to the criteria, John belabored these quite a bit, but I do want to hit it. We've got parks right next to the school district property, single family. We've got a little chunk of neighborhood commercial up there, maybe a coffee stand, a daycare, something that fits right in there, maybe 24-hour fitness. One of those things, some of those things just fit right into a little neighborhood that would complement a school, would also complement the neighborhood. This absolutely makes sense when it comes to just land application. And of course, future land use map, you know, it's higher intensity closer to the highway, lower intensity as we move away. Criteria 2, land use goals and policies. John hit this, we hit this in our narrative. I don't think I need to go over it. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you've got them. Same thing for these three. Community plans, geographic natural features, we've talked about those. Rob talked about transportation master plan, how this works with the transportation master plan network. It gives the residents in the existing Crown Point, right now, they've got 2 opportunities to get out of their subdivision. They go to either Spokane Street or they get a right in or right out onto Prairie Avenue. So there's, maybe it's a left out, but I don't think so anymore. So the restricted access, this gives them the ability to go out to the north, out to the west. not gonna say the traffic from this isn't gonna go south. What I'm saying is that it gives everybody more opportunities to get themselves out of the proverbial rat maze. So, criteria 3 for this, it's the community plan, wastewater master plan. Makes a lot of sense. And of course, here we have transportation master plan. There will be a road network at the 1/8 mile and 1/4 mile through here. That all fits with the transportation master plan. We understand that there are some challenges with infrastructure in this area. For this one specifically, we understand that the Highway 41 corridor, I think they're doing landscaping finally. And now we've got the Interchange project coming up. And I think our goal here and what we've agreed to is to not do any development on this site until either after the interchange is complete or for a 5-year period, whichever is later. So whichever is a later date, not a sooner date, whichever is later. That makes it so that ensures that all the infrastructure in the Highway 41 corridor is built and functioning prior to us even starting any development out here. When it comes to high density and commercial, we talked about this up on Hayden Avenue. Hayden's a commercial or a collector street, and that's where we very thoughtfully decided to place our commercial and our multifamily. This is not really applicable, and of course, we've talked about this, Highway 41, principal arterial, Hayden Avenue, major collector. And as we go further away, we get less intense. And so, this one, again, pretty straightforward. We're further away from the high-intensity corridors. We've got a little bit of commercial up there, which makes sense. It gives the ability for the neighborhood to have just, maybe, like I said, coffee stand, daycare, little neighborhood things that make sense in that area, but not a giant commercial shopping center. This is not really applicable here. And of course, we've talked about this, but it's really just the same story over and over. High intensity uses next to the highway, and then complementary uses as we transition to the west and north. And of course, criteria 6 is not applicable. And then I jump into questions, but before I really get into answering any questions, I want to talk just a little bit about the opportunity. And one of the reasons that I think we're here tonight is because your city staff recognize the incredible opportunity in front of them. When properties like these go up on the open market, they don't last long. Land developers snatch them up for much higher prices than the city would probably ever want to pay, and they do it much faster. They have the ability to act very quickly. They don't have to go in front of a city council, ask to requisition the money to do it. And this is a really, really unique opportunity that doesn't come along very often. I think, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it 2013 was when the original acquisition happened? 2009. Okay. And I think the per acre number for acquisition was somewhere in the neighborhood of, was it 17,000?
I was more like 15.
Okay, 15,000 an acre. Okay, so that was right after a real estate market crash. So the absolute bottom of a real estate market. And so we're talking right now at $22,000 an acre. That is one heck of a deal. Most of the developers that I work for right now are purchasing properties anywhere from between $70,000 and $120,000, $130,000 an acre. Large parcels on the prairie don't come up very often, and when they do, they get snatched up. This is one heck of an opportunity. We're really, really excited to bring this to you, because if they were to go on the open market, probably wouldn't be lasting long. But we've been working with city staff for over a year on this. We think it's a great opportunity for the community as a whole to benefit, and we respectfully ask for your approval tonight.
Any questions from proponents at this point? Joe?
Mr. Malloy?
The multifamily in North Crown, are you planning on 3-story walk-ups or 2-story or?
No idea. There's
If,
absolutely, so you got to remember, this was, maybe we can get this done. The amount of planning that we put into it, it's been very thoughtful as to the location. As to the details, not really anything. I would imagine probably the 3-story woody walk-up, similar to what you normally see. It's kind of I guess you call them the garden-style apartments is what they're being called. Maybe garage unders, maybe a mix, I don't know. It's just whatever fits in with the neighborhood is really the plan.
If it was limited to 2 stories, would that kill the deal?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't know if it really matters. So it's just a matter of when it comes to, so does it make sense to go to 2 stories? I don't know. I mean, I've probably designed about, I don't know, in the last 5 years, about 2,000 units of apartments. And I found that the most efficient use is probably in that 3-story range. And when they're located properly, where the buildings are sited so that they don't have 3 stories overlooking single-family houses, that they're across the street from them, that's the kind of thing that makes sense. Because you get the proper density where you're using the land efficiently, if that makes sense, and yet you're not being obtrusive in with the neighborhood. The plan there was to have that entire multifamily piece surrounded by a road. So it would be surrounded 4 sides if you count Hayden, with a road, and that way there's no next door neighbors to complain about it, but it's also situated right next to a school site, which makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So I know this is a pretty early rendering of kind of the locations of your different zoning types within residential mix, but is that kind of your, more or less your idea of really locating multifamily and commercial away, clear to the north side of the parcel?
That's where we've committed to doing it. We want it away from the Spokane Street corridor, so we're very comfortable with that location.
Okay, so in its entirety, the amount of, say, multifamily is going to be like in this rendering in the northwest corner?
It will be, and by the way, there's a maximum in that. It's not 8.3 acres, it's 8.3 max, so it's not a minimum.
Yeah, I guess my question is more, I know the amount restriction, but it's
Okay.
also the distribution of where it's located. That
We don't want to change it. If we have no intention to change it, as long as and I'm getting that you don't want us to change it. Is that-
Well, it's in the proposed development agreement, right?
Right, yeah,
That's what I was
where
going
it
to
is.
say.
It's in the development agreement.
These
Okay.
locations are tied down in
Are
the
tied in
development
it, okay.
agreement,
Right.
and those commitments run with the land. So if they sold this property to a different developer, you're stuck with those locations, absent coming back through the public process in front of the council.
Very good.
Right.
And then my other question is about accessibility to, especially like that little commercial node. Would it be feeding right onto Hayden Avenue, or would there be a frontage road there for access, or what would that look like?
Great question, and I'm just going to jump back a couple slides to, if I can. So our plan is roughly in this vicinity here, to have a street that abuts the school property. We don't necessarily want to have backyards of houses up against a school fence and a school playground. Those things, dogs barking at kids don't really work too well. So we like to have a street buffer, and it actually works a lot better for the school district, because people dropping off their kids have a nice street there, nice pedestrian corridor right along the school frontage. That's the plan. Obviously, this is a zoning map. That's our plan. That's our goal. That's what we want to do when we design a community in a neighborhood. We want to be very intentional about where we place the roads, the trail systems, the parks, and how we make it into a community that everyone who lives there is going to love.
So with the with the question about accessibility onto Hayden, is that
I don't intend to have, we didn't intend to have any access, direct access onto Hayden for our commercial. I'm sure Rob would pop in and say, nope, not gonna let it happen.
Yeah.
So, and then we actually intend to have it's not really shown very well there, but we intend to have a nice wide green belt right across on Hayden Avenue. There's some existing utilities that are on the south side of Hayden that are, so the city of Rathdrum's wastewater pump or wastewater lines run through there. So it would be smart for us to just not do any development there, make a nice green belt, similar to what you see along Idaho Street next to Fieldstone. So a nice big wide green belt, pathway going through it, trees, great place to walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those wishing to testify? Everybody okay?
Short recess wouldn't kill me, but.
Anybody entertain a 5-minute recess? Everybody?
Neutral, whatever.
Yep.
I'm good.
You wanna do it? You wanna do
I
it?
think it's gonna be a long slog, so if we're gonna take one, you should do it now.
We've been going about 2 hours. We're gonna take a real short 5-minute recess, and let's keep it at 5 minutes, and then we'll get into the testimony. So we'll enter recess. Call the meeting back to order, and we are still in the public hearing. And we have got people that do wish to testify.
Got another one there.
I'm sorry?
That's another.
Wishing to testify in favor, not wishing to speak, Tom Stoser. The city benefits from this land swap by gaining 98 acres of additional public reserve. The Post Falls School District benefits from this land swap by getting sewer to their future school site. In favor, wishing to speak, is Dina Nacarado.
Mayor Jacobson, members of council, I'm Dina Nacarado, Superintendent of the Post Falls School District. I am here to speak in favor of this proposal. As everyone is aware, the school district currently owns approximately 70 acres adjacent to the proposed annexation. Normally, the school district takes a neutral stance in proposed developments. But in this case, the Jacklins have given the district a letter of intent which states in part, and I quote, "Jacklin will work in good faith to extend utilities, including but not limited to water, sewer, gas, power, and telecom, to and through future public road, which will be located on the property line between North Crown Point and the Post Falls School District, just west of the Jacklin property. Jacklin is willing to stub out these utilities to support the needs of the Post Falls School District if the Post Falls School District has sufficient design information available during the construction of Jacklin's infrastructure improvements within North Crown Point. I'm not sure if citizens are aware that school districts are unable to collect impact fees per Idaho code. Nor am I certain those new to Idaho are aware that there is no state match to build school buildings, and a bond requires a 66 2/3 supermajority to pass. The Jacklins' willingness to extend infrastructure to district property creates savings to the taxpayer when the time comes to build school buildings on our site. It is for this reason the district supports the Jacklin Land Company request. Thank you.
Thank you. In favor, not wishing to speak, Jen McGuire. Did I get that right? Gives city 98 acres of preserved prairie land and additional commercial retail, which the city needs for economic growth. In favor, wishing to speak, is Wade Jacklin.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Wade Jacklin. I'm also fourth generation Jacklin and grew up like probably a lot of these people and you working in these fields out on the prairie, picking rock, changing pipe, and ended up going into the military after doing this all through junior high and high school. Came back, worked at Jacklin Seed in the marketing department, and eventually got into real estate. 5 to 6 years ago, I was asked to start contributing a little bit more with the family, and one of the tasks we were given, Tag, my cousin, and Glenn, was to help with the veterans home. The family had already agreed to donate the land, and what we were tasked with was going around to Lewiston and Boise, working with the state administrators and the VA, and as well as some national administrators, to ensure that Post Falls would get that veterans home. There were 60 plus other applicants across the country trying to get the exact same grant. Only one was awarded, and it was here. And it was a great success for us and for the community. This, has been a culmination of almost 2 years of working with staff and internally to try and make sure that this was done properly, thoughtfully, and intentionally. We, as you can see, have done just that. City staff is very informed on what we're trying to do, and is eager like we are to see this happen. The one other thing I wanted to bring up as a real estate agent is the bargain sale that this is turning into. There's, like John Beecham mentioned, the 15 acres that was purchased, that was at $68,000 per acre. There was another sale just recently of 40 acres for $3 million, which worked out to $76,000 per acre. This is at $22,000. We're doing this not just for ourselves. We want to see the community thrive. We love the idea of that preserved prairie of 98 acres, especially going up and down Greens Ferry, where you see that Satchwell property that will remain farmland, agriculture. It'll look great for everybody in the future, as well as the North Thompson, which you'll see from Highway 41. We really encourage City Council and the Mayor to look at this as an opportunity that probably won't happen again of this size, to be able to make a purchase like this, to preserve the prairie for the community, and also assist in the land application need that the city itself needs. Thanks.
Thank you. In favor and not wishing to speak is Eric Gonzalez. Site, this gives the city 98 acres of preserved prairie land. Not wishing to speak in favor, Sam Johnson. I think the city of Post Falls is getting the better end of the deal, coming out with an extra 100 acres and consolidating development into the Crown Point area. Absolutely support and recommend approval. Not wishing to speak in favor, William Clark. Not wishing to speak and in favor, Amy Pace. Support annexation and land exchange. City will gain 98 acres in this exchange. That land preserves prairie land. Not wishing to speak and in favor is Dwayne Oliver. The future growth of Post Falls will benefit from the addition, I think it says from the action this addresses. Wishing to speak in favor, Maggie Lyons. Sorry, Maggie.
Mayor Jacobson, Council. My name is Maggie Lyons, and I'm here representing Panhandle Affordable Housing Alliance. I am so encouraged by this proposal that's before you. Not only is it a fabulous land swap opportunity to preserve open space on the prairie, but it is a wonderful opportunity to pursue solutions for true worker housing. The Jacqueline family, being local like they are, understand this community better than many developers. And we have engaged in conversation with them about what does it look like to actually reserve and preserve worker housing in this development that will remain affordable for our policemen, our teachers, and our middle-class workers in perpetuity. What does that look like? These homes will be built at lower price points. They will be home ownership. They will help these homeowners access residences that they never would be able to afford in this community, given where real estate prices are today. They are preserved in affordability and perpetuity through deed restrictions that PAHA will partner with them to manage. It is vision and leadership by the city and by this developer. It's a 10-year BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, that across this county, we can have every developer reserve a percentage of their developments in cooperation with the jurisdictions to ensure that this lower cost housing is built and will always remain affordable for that worker. So that's why I'm excited about this opportunity, and I encourage you to approve what's before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing to speak neutral, Alan Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My comments tonight aren't just directed to you. My comments are also directed to the Jacklins, who personally thank you for all you've done for our community. One of the reasons I'm neutral on this is because part of it I really support, and then part of it I don't support at all. The biggest part that I support is obviously the 98 acres of new public reserve. Wow, that's nice. So I'm going to focus on the piece that I just can't get my arms around, and that is the South Thompson piece. What we would create, and John, could you pull up a picture of that for me? Thank you. Unfortunately, through this deal, we would create an island of residential at the corner of Hayden and Highway 41. We've all been there. There's really nothing out there except ag land. But if this is approved, as you can see, yeah, go back to the other one. That one. Everything fits nicely. You got subdivision next to the school, you've got 98 acres more of land application. The land application is adjacent and part of what's already there. The part that doesn't fit is that little triangle north of the tech park. And the reason that I'm asking the Jacklins is, would they consider taking that out of this scenario? Because it does not fit. The annexation, the land exchange, the changing, the zoning of the North Crown property, that all fits. That piece does not fit. If we look at the criteria that John talked about, the policies, community levels of service, you're creating an area out there that is far away from fire, it's far away from police, there's no parks, there's nothing out there. Compatibility for the other land uses. We've got a tech park that's been there forever. It's not compatible with what's right there. Adequate land. We have a lot of land that's already been annexed and is ready for development. Connectivity. How does that really connect to the rest of the community right now? Timing of orderly development. This is what it's really about, the timing. The rest of it, I can understand, the timing of it. I'm asking the Jacklins to say, you know what, we can hold off on that. We don't need to annex that right now. We don't need to zone it with residential now. Let's wait and see what happens with Highway 41, what happens with that corner, what happens with everything else, and come back at a later time and then annex that South Thompson piece and zone it properly at that time. Mr. Kimball said we're not going to do anything for 5 years. A lot can change in 5 years. We've all seen what can happen in 5 years. So let's hold off for 5 years. Let's not annex that piece tonight. Let's hold off, let everything else develop, and bring it in when we have a better idea. The rest of it makes sense, and I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Wolf.
Mayor, is it okay to ask someone to clarify?
You mean the developer?
I was gonna ask Alan, but it's
Oh,
what he was talking about.
Mr. Wilson, can she ask a question of Mr. Wolf? Sure. Al, would you
Mr.
come-
Wolf,
Al, would you come back up?
you're just
That's
you're a
it.
fast mover.
Sorry.
I just wanted you to clarify when you were talking about the piece, that you were talking the residential, and you're talking about the entire piece there on the far right. You've got the green land application, but at the bottom half of that,
Section 5.
yes, the bottom half, section 5, you're talking about that whole piece?
All of the piece 5.
All of piece 5?
Right. Let everything else happen. We just don't need that. There's a lot of moving parts here. There's a land exchange. There's the changing of the zoning for North Point. And in addition to that, it's the annexation and zoning of that piece number 5 on the map.
And it's the residential that you're thinking
Yeah.
is,
It doesn't fit.
I was thinking I'd love to have land application behind me.
No,
forever.
well, that's fine, but why do you have to have residential on that corner? There's nothing else out there. There's not any houses anywhere near that corner.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
In opposition, wishing to speak, Carrie Couch.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Carrie Couch. I live on Scottsworth, which is right on the other side of Bodine. What I want to say is that we're asking for a postponement, really, for your decision to be postponed. We need more time to work with all these groups so that the people most affected by this whole zoning change will have input in what's planned. I have a few ideas, and maybe others do too. We haven't had time to work on it, and we would like to. It's really important to us, and it's worrisome considering the dramatic way that the community will be affected by this change. I wanted to make one kind of correction, or what I think is a correction. Your rules say that it has to be like for like, so that the new community that's coming into play behind my house is great there because there's housing where I am. I say that that's a negative. It shouldn't be like for like. You should have a mixture of things. You don't want houses on top of houses on top of houses. I've actually come from a place that was like that, and it's not good. It's crowded streets. It's a mess. So I thought that Post Falls was different. I didn't think that you guys wanted that type of, but yet it's in your rules, like for like. And the gentleman that spoke before me said that he wanted to wait for what's happening in 5, because there is nothing else like that out there. That could be a positive. I'm not saying I don't want to wait. I do. But I think that we shouldn't be thinking that way. That shouldn't be in our rules. It shouldn't be. I was told when I bought my house that the property behind us was owned by the city of Post Falls and zoned properly, so it would never change. It wouldn't change. Now, I know well enough that you guys can change the zoning, but I certainly didn't expect it to be so soon. My understanding is that there are plenty of houses for resale or maybe not affordable housing. Maybe we need more affordable housing. But there are plenty of housing. When I drive around, I see plenty of empty houses. I don't think you need that there, or if again, I'd like to see about maybe changing the place that it's gonna be, that the houses behind me are gonna go. Let's see. The infrastructure, that is a real problem. I moved here 2 years ago, and at first I had a doctor. I was able to get a doctor, but he closed down, moved his business. I have had to wait. I made 20 calls to find another doctor. The doctors here are a little different than where I came from. They are looking at your records to see if they want to take you on. They don't just, used to be you make an appointment and you go to see a doctor. Instead, they decide if they want to take you. I found a doctor in across the border in near Spokane, And my appointment is in March of 2024. In the meantime, they're taking care of me remotely, making sure I have my medicine and all that. But you guys don't have enough doctors. I shouldn't say you guys. We don't have enough doctors. And we don't have a lot of other things either. And now you're going to add more to it. I just don't think that there's enough infrastructure in place. There's enough, you know, of a lot of things. Let's see. I want to also mention that my house is right off of Bodine. So just the work, I work from the house. The work that will be involved in creating all this is going to be right out my door. Not, you know, so we would again like to have more input in when things would be done, how it would be done, if you guys agree to it. You know, we'd like to have some parameters set in place and maybe work with the company that's going to do this. It may affect, I currently have what's it called? An opening there, not a fence, an opening in my fence, whatever that is. I'm older now. Anyway, that might not be able to be open now with Bodine going through. There's a lot to think about. Let's see.
You got 8 seconds, ma'am.
Oh, is that it? Oh, 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for your time. I think that's it.
Real quick question.
Okay.
Is your address, are you in the Crown Point subdivision?
It's, yeah, 9045, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wishing to speak in opposition, Valerie Hamilton.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Hamilton. I live at 8953 North Scottsworth Street. It is also, my backyard would be on Bodine. So I have just a couple of questions. I came here with one opinion, and maybe you've talked me into just a little bit of a neutral position. I've spent many sleepless nights over this in the last couple of months. But one of the questions I have for the developer is, what is the price point going to be for these new homes in this development? Because what I'm finding is that in our area, homes like mine, I live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. I bought it just before everything skyrocketed. I work in the medical field, but I'm in medical records. And if I were to try to buy my home today at 7% interest, there is no way I would qualify for a loan. So other people who are trying to get these loans, who are lower income, cannot afford a $400,000+ home. Where is the affordable housing? The apartments that are within Crown Point area, there's several hundred apartments there. If I were to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, it's higher than my mortgage by $100. For a 3-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms, I would be renting a 1-bedroom apartment with 1 bathroom for $1,300. My mortgage, after the taxes went up, I was right around $1,000 a month. And when we got more taxes, my mortgage is closer to $1,200 a month. For somebody in a lower income job, you know, $20, $22 an hour, I can still afford that. But if it went up even just a little bit more, I'm going to be priced out. There's no way I could afford a $400,000 or $500,000 home on the money that I make. And so the other people who are trying to get jobs here and want to work in the medical field, and they want to be police officers, and they want to be teachers, and you know, people who service our area can't afford these kind of homes. Where is our affordable housing? When they put in the apartments in Crown Point, I heard that they're going to increase the amount of parking spaces, which is a great idea because you cannot hardly get in and out of Crown Point through Spokane Street because of the parking that is going on from those apartments along that street. You also can't get out of our neighborhood unless you get out onto Prairie and turn right. You can't take a left onto Prairie at the other entrance. So what happens is I've read through, on my sleepless nights, I've read through the section number 4 of the Post Falls Transportation Plan, and it talks about Spokane Street specifically. So I'm just going to read a quote from what I read out of this. And I'm sorry, I'm going to hurry as fast as I can. Chapter 4 of the City of Post Falls Transportation Plan, it states that within neighborhoods are intended to be minor collectors, defined as being, quote, intended to serve abutting properties and local access needs or neighborhoods. They are intended to carry about 1,500 to 5,000 vehicles per day, including limited through traffic. These are intended to serve residential, commercial, or mixed land uses. So currently, Spokane Street is classified as a major collector. It's defined as, quote, roads intended to focus primarily on mobility needs. They are intended to carry between 4,000 and 12,000 vehicles per day. So Spokane Street comes right into our neighborhood, potentially carrying 4,000 to 12,000 cars a day. However, if North Crown Point Development is allowed to go through Spokane Street, will become a minor arterial, which according to the public transportation definition is intended to move traffic loaded from collector streets between areas across the city or region. So that is exactly what would happen. It would load traffic moving from the busy downtown corridor and the exit off of the freeway, the only one that would come straight through our neighborhood and up to Hayden. That property, through Hayden, residential properties or developments should not access directly onto arterial streets. Minor arterials are intended to carry between 6,000 and 15,000 cars per day. So as your engineer has pointed out for the new development up in Crown Point, they have made this road kind of wind through it and have these cross streets have smaller footage, I guess we'll call it. But the reality is that it will become a minor arterial. People, you can tell me that people are going to slow down, but if you go down there by where the cemetery is, it's been a 25-mile-an-hour zone. And if you were to go down there and sit there with a radar gun, I can tell you that people never do 25 down there, and they won't do 25 through our neighborhood. We either need something like speed bumps, roundabouts, something else that is going to slow traffic down and keep them from coming through this part of town and making a minor or a major arterial. Thank you for letting me have an opportunity to speak. And I did want to just say one more thing. I do respect the Jacklin family and their businesses and what they've done here. If we have to deal with anybody, I'd like it to be with the Jacklins, because my family has also been here for 4 generations and 2 more after me. So 6 generations of my family have been here. So I do appreciate you. And if this does have to go through, I would really like to be able to make some comments so that we can work this well together.
Thank you. In opposition, not wishing to speak, Katrina Schultz. I feel that this will be opening up to heavy chaos, crime. We already have extremely heavy traffic and cars speeding. This would not be good for Crown Point. In opposition, not wishing to speak, Teresa Goodall. In opposition, wishing to speak, Samantha Stieglater.
Mayor, Council, hi. Thanks for allowing us to speak. Oh, turkeys. So again, I would request.
Samantha, name for the record, please.
Oh, sorry, Samantha Stieglater. I said hi and then I didn't say that. Sorry. Samantha Steglater. I live on Knob Creek in Post Falls. Again, I would respectfully request that the public be given access to the city's proposals prior to this meeting so that I could better understand what they were trying to do with this land, as my PowerPoint makes a lot less sense after I saw all the stuff about the water reclamation, although it doesn't make no sense at all. So, in opposition, I do have a few points. I understand that we're getting 260 acres of additional land annexation, but is that land really immediately useful to the city? Do we need to annex that much land in right now? I know that there have been annexation requests recently that we have declined because we didn't want to add more land in at this time, so I think that that's a valid question to ask. The quality versus quantity question, really while I was looking through this document, why would someone give 170 acres to only get 80 acres? But now I understand better that it has to do with our water reclamation plan, which leads me to a different question. If we are so short of land to fulfill like our water reclamation needs in this, like distributed across land, why are we annexing in 160? Why would we desire to annex in 162 more acres of people that are going to use more water that needs to be serviced and then redistributed? So I think that if we're already kind of in a pinch on how we're doing that and what land we're going to do that with, maybe that would be evidence that we are not using our land accurately based on the criteria and goals, and that we should slow that a bit so that we can address the issues that we already have that we're trying to fix. And then the zone change precedent. Again, I understand better what we were trying to do, but I've seen a couple of zone change requests come through. I don't know, I say recently, but it feels like the last 2 years have really flown by, so maybe not be that recently. Where developers have had a zone change, or had a zone, but because it hasn't been something that they are able to use at this time, then they come and request a zone change, kind of saying that it benefits the public, but really does it benefit the public, or really is it more for the developers? I went through like some goals, because I'm learning that you're supposed to like look at goals and policies to talk about things. So when I was looking at it, we would be dividing public services by moving that land away from the school where it was already going to be used for public services. But again, now I know better that we're just wanting to irrigate that land and not necessarily like build. What I would really love is a public school or a public pool in Post Falls that the school could use and we could all use, and not just be the Croc Center. The transportation, again, the idea of kind of like splitting that land up, but I understand better now. The ability to revise or apply, revise, or rezoning designation with careful consideration, like so careful, so careful. I think that leaving that land open is more compatible with the school, not putting a bunch more houses around it. And then locating schools and park facilities together, obviously, like this would do the opposite of that. I don't know if we can put parks on land that we water with this water. Like, I don't really understand that part of it. But the idea is that like we have 80 acres that we could do something for public use right next to a public school, and that might be kind of cool instead of having to drive down Hayden where there really isn't anything developed yet. I'm doing okay. All right, so my other point, there's a really big piece of that Zone 5 that's R2, and I know that usually when we talk about R2, we like to say things like affordable housing and made for new families that are trying to get into owning property. Turkeys, I didn't do this right, did I? I'm so sorry. I haven't used PowerPoint in like, I don't know, years. But this is a screenshot off of the Wildflower Meadows website, which is located on McGuire, just north of Spokane, where it's R2, and they're doing duplexes and townhomes. The townhomes start at almost $500,000. So, and then where it says duplex options, in bold is what it says, is designed for investors. So that's not at all the people that, when we talk about R2, and the developers talk about R2, that's not at all what we say that R2 is for, right? $500,000 or investors. So I think to the point of affordable housing, that's not really it. Oh dear. And then my last one, is this really in the interest of the city, for bettering the city for the current residents of Post Falls? And I think that like that's the big question that I always ask myself with these proposals. Is it really gonna better the lives of the residents that live here right now? And like if we don't have clean water, or our water isn't like getting treated properly, then yeah, we need these acres to make that happen. But if this is really just because it's a good deal and it works out for the city and for the developer, but the actual residents of Post Falls aren't being immediately benefited, I think that maybe reconsideration or just looking at a different time might be a good idea. I have a lot of other things written down, so I'm gonna do really fast. I totally agree with Mr. Wolf that left. I don't understand why Parcel 5 is part of this at all, other than that it sweetens the deal for the developer. The Jacqueline family seems really nice, but I don't know, I guess I'll use the last 20 seconds to give my pedigree in case it makes you like me more. I'm a nurse in a pediatric emergency department. I homeschool 3 boys. I taught them all how to read. I've been married to my husband for 15 years. My mom is a nurse. My dad's a really good guy. I just don't understand why that is pertinent when we have these conversations. Thank you so much. As always, you're always very gracious to me. So
Thank you. In opposition, not wishing to speak, Travis Babb. I'm opposed to the extension of Spokane Street to Hayden Avenue. I have 2 young children. I moved into a quiet neighborhood where there was a park across the street. Now it is dead-ended. There are already motorcycles and cars speeding on the dead-end street. I have reported this several times. If the police even show up, they are too late. They can't even police who is out there now. Wishing to speak in opposition, Gene Walker.
Good evening, Board, Council. I'm part of the HOA Board for Crown Point.
Name, please.
I'm sorry, Jean Walker.
Thank you.
And I'm part of the Crown Point HOA Board. And we, as an HOA Board, represent 386 homes in that development. And we are an elected official, obviously just like you guys are. As democratically elected members to represent this community, as you all are to this city, we write this letter and adamantly oppose any approval for or development to the Thomas Satchwell and the North Crown development. The HOA's position remains in opposition to this development, and we intend to use whatever process we can to communicate and advance this dissenting stance to this development. We also oppose any further residential expansion at this time not yet approved by the city of Post Falls. Our basis for this opposition is logical, based on fact and evidence, and is prudent. Approving such a development is in defiance of responsible government, reasonable growth, and is in direct conflict with public safety. Currently, our police, medical, and fire services for the city are not able to provide services at a reasonable level. Using the police as an example, you currently have 2 to 3 cars working for a whole shift for the police department to cover the whole city. The department is not able to address issues of public safety, much less of city code infractions to matters involving this traffic safety and impedance. The city cannot retain officers, much less adequately train new hires, and this has been a continual issue for years. Current city residents and taxpayers have approved new fire service infrastructures, and you are years behind to get your fire service needs up to a level that can handle the current residential population. Adding to this population by approving this development causes more risk for current residents and more strain on your ability to provide services. Members of this board, as well as our management company, have been in communication with city councilors, members of the city departments, and others in order to try and interface and partner to fix issues that we have had come to our attention that we have no jurisdiction over. Many of these are about city-specific factors and code regulations related matters that directly impact health, welfare, and safety of residents. What we have received is incomplete fixes, promises to follow up, and absences in response. The inability for the city to provide reasonable services to our community is unacceptable. We can only expect a further erosion of our service level and our community as this continues and then worsens as further development is to include this new annex. You, as the city councilors, are also not properly acting in adequate to address and adjust the size and function of your city department, much less public safety departments, to a reasonable level. All the while, you refuse to pass laws, make rules, or seek the proper education and options to do so in order to slow and control development and growth in the city and address gaps in the city's resources and services. Approving any further development, including this one we are opposing today, depletes and strains city's resources further and places the residents currently paying taxes in the city in more harm and take burden for services they do not receive. Our community is already seeing its wear and tear by the shoddy work done and permitted because city officials' failure to properly police developers' actions, works, and documents. The city has allowed developers to hold HOAs hostage in their established governing documents of the development. Long after the developers have their money and are gone, the development residents and members are unable to make changes in order to address the issues within their communities. This city has permitted the use of inferior materials and how they are used for such things as sidewalks, curbs, etc., that erode and decayed within 1 to 2 years and long before what is expected. Developers also are permitted to make deals with multifamily homes, apartment complexes investors so that they're not any way tied or part of the HOA division, subdivision that they are built in, and therefore avoid any sort of regulatory control of the HOA. All of these issues lie with you and the departments you govern to assure residents live in quality communities and can work democratically to address what they would like in their communities. While we hope you as a body scrutinize and investigate so all these things are avoided in the future, we are unaware of any action taken to mitigate these issues and therefore oppose this development. We want to make it clear that we support our public safety personnel and departments without hesitation. The issues we address in this letter are not their issues, and we know this. We cherish and respect them, and many live in our community. We want to make this clear that the trust in any developer by what is evident in our community and others in the city and the county is eroding. We have sidewalks that have cement that are deteriorating. I lived in my house for 4 years, and the sidewalk is eroding. It's the quality of things that were done in our development. We have speeding down the roads. We call the police, try to get things corrected. There's just not enough personnel to do it. And if we're going to build more houses and without bringing more personnel on for your infrastructure, we're going to see more and more problems like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing to speak in opposition, Lacey Green.
Is this someone's phone? Pink phone? Mayor, council members, my name's Lacey Green. I've been up here a couple times. I came to the planning and zoning meeting. Me and my husband, we farm out on the Rathdrum Prairie. That's what majority of that area is, farmland. Lots of it. There's 5-acre parcels, there's 10-acre parcels. There's not an area for an apartment complex, let alone a 3-story apartment complex on Hayden Avenue, which already has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 12 homes that come out daily, car traffic on Hayden Avenue right there, which has not become an easy thing to do currently with the amount of traffic that has impeded upon this town with the instant growth that's happened. Having Spokane Street come through to North Spokane Street, I guess one of my biggest questions with this development is, are the addresses gonna impede and change all the addresses north of Hayden Avenue again for the 5th time? Because they had to do that to us when the Crown Point development came through. We were 83, we were the 8,000 block or whatever, and we had to go up to the 9,000. Is that gonna be something that we all have to go and endure again, having our addresses changed, our driver's license changed, everything changed over? Not to mention the amount of traffic that would come down our road trying to get to that neighborhood, because that neighborhood's address was coming to our address instead of actually going to the other address. So there was a lot of unnecessary traffic that was led onto North Spokane Street, which is a dirt road, which is not maintained by the highway district. It is a private road. We maintain it. We take care of it. And there's a mass influx of traffic that's going to keep coming if you guys put a road straight through right there. The traffic that's already on Hayden Avenue, it's not safe. I discussed how I was already a statistic in the Hutter and Hayden Avenue intersection. There's a lot of intersections, infrastructure that needs to happen before we develop any more developments. I've drove back and forth from Rathdrum to Post Falls. There's at least 6 or 7 developments in Post Falls currently. The past 6 months have started to be developed, but there's no houses being built on them. And we want to have more developments be built. It's just not, it's not logical. It's not the time. I think there's a lot of assessments that need to be done. Has there been a hydrologist? Do you know when the last report for the aquifer is? With a hydrologist, scientific investigation into the water table? Does anyone have an idea when the last one?
We have staff could address that.
Okay, because I think the only thing I could find was 2007, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of detriment to the aquifer since 2007. Aquifers collect water from the mountains and precipitation. I'm sure we all know this. But it also collects from the ground too, from precipitation. If we keep building on top of the aquifer with concrete and asphalt and things that are not going to let that water be absorbed, we're going to start losing our water table at a very fast rate. And it's already happening. Irrigation is, there's not a ton of pressure for the irrigation that's already going out on a lot of these fields. If they need somewhere to dump water, I'm sure there's a lot of farmers that would be more than willing to figure somewhere where you holding tanks to put irrigation if you need. I'm all about getting the acreage to you guys. That would be awesome. But do I think this is a long-term plan that's best or beneficial for the area? No, absolutely not. I think it's detrimental. I think it would take away from the quality of life that the people that have been living out there for quite some time. There's already newcomers to that area that have been detrimental and caused a lot of police, Kootenai County Sheriff being in that area to the point of disrupting other neighbors. Having apartment complexes come in like that it's just going to increase more traffic. It's going to cause the quality of life for the people that have worked really hard to be on those parcels as they are in 10-acre parcels and 5-acre parcels. It's going to take their quality of life away than that has already been going on. Like, I can't remember what her name was, but she stated something in terms of the school benefiting from open fields would, I mean, it makes sense. There's a lot more that can be done agricultural with teaching our kids about land and land use that could come to use. Also, another big issue with the schools is the Rathdrum Prairie gets pretty icy, pretty windy, and there's a lot of snow drifts that come out there. And there's been a lot of times where me and my husband has had to almost go out onto the roads because the plow trucks haven't been able to get out there fast enough. And it's been a risk, and it's a massive risk when putting that school there as well. So I oppose it completely and totally.
Thank you, ma'am. Wishing to speak in opposition, Mitch Edgar.
Council members, my name is Mitch Edgar.
When you get to the microphone, please, just they have to pick it up. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, council members, my name is Mitch Edgar. I live in Crown Point for the past 4 years. I'll be brief. The last time I took an exit, number 5 off the interstate, it said Spokane Street. You're saying Spokane Street is a residential road. You just widened Spokane Street up by the cemetery. It's exit number 5 off the interstate. That's an arterial. I don't care what you call it. It's exit number 5. It's an arterial. There's a lot of traffic on Spokane Street. often me going to the Bunker Bar and then heading north, okay? I wonder how many of your communities you've planned here have an arterial running through it, right adjacent a 5-acre heavy-use park. The Crown Point Park is full of kids all the time. As it stands now, Spokane Street terminates at the end of Crown Point. That's a great idea. The only traffic we have to worry about are visitors and residents, right? It's manageable. But as you hear everybody, the traffic is increased. It's huge, especially with that apartment complex now on the north, or the southeast corner, which you've allocated, by your own admission, 1.5 parking spots per resident, or per unit, correct? So last time I came off that Taj Mahal at traffic circles and went north on Spokane, you can see the damage on the cars on each side of the road, and there's a new one every other week. It just gets crushed. All I'm saying is, I think you have to admit to yourselves that Spokane Street is a major arterial, and you've run Spokane Street up to the end of Crown Point. Crown Point North would take Spokane Street, wind it through an even a longer track to Hayden, and put at risk more residents whose properties line up on Spokane Street. Kids, bicyclists, we even have a roller derby queen rolling around Crown Point. We all know her. So I'd prefer not to see him crushed. I don't suspect any of your signature subdivisions have an arterial running through them to a school, to an east-west major highway. You're going to build up, I know that. But wouldn't it make more sense to put a subdivision flanked by residential roads and not put one right through it? That's risky business. As I understand it, this is part of a deal where you're paying to swap land to take care of effluent, right? Water runoff, correct? You have property just north of Crown Point. You own it. It's yours. How much would the infrastructure cost to grow trees in that parcel? Not risk the lives of kids playing in Crown Point Park. Run roads through a new subdivision just north of that. I understand people want to get into Idaho. After 20 years in the Army and a lot of hell, I needed a place that's quiet. I need a place I can relax, and I like to walk to the park and see the kids play. Happy. Things are happy. Driving up and down Spokane Street is not the happiest thing I do in Post Falls. Don't drag it through yet another proposed community and my home. I already have trouble. I have 3 cops living on Spokane Street, or Scottsworth, 3 cops. One belongs to you guys. They can't stop the speeders, okay? And I don't know that this probably isn't the forum to discuss that. But what you can influence is where those roads go. Are you gonna run one right through Crown Point? Are you gonna run one right through another subdivision? Right through the middle of it? Take the long way around? Does that make sense? Land swap, I've got some time. I wonder if I think this is a good deal, and I like what Jacqueline has done for veterans, being one. But I wonder if the folks in East Palestine, Ohio, would recognize that the development of land around, bisected by a rail line, is a smart idea. So I think this is good for Jacqueline. I really do. I think it's bad for Post Falls, and especially people living in Crown Point. 15 seconds. Part of my job in the Army was mitigating risk for your soldiers. These are your soldiers. Mitigate risk. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That completes the testimony. At this point, the applicant has time to rebut.
Wrong one. Gosh dang it, I do it every time. Mayor and Council, Ray Kimball again for the record. So there's a couple things we heard tonight. One of the biggest problems that we face as a community is affordable housing. Now, one thing we don't get to do is close the door at the border, not let anybody in. Our real estate market does not have a hometown discount. When someone sells their house, there's no discount for someone who was born here. So we have an affordability crisis, if you will. We have a Bozeman problem. Okay, we've been found. We have a certain amount of housing, and people with deeper pockets than those who live here and who grew up here are buying property here. And it's America, by God, they're allowed to do that. But as a community and someone who's grown up here and lived here my entire life, who's deeply vested in this community, I want to be committed to solving that problem, solving our housing issues. One way to do that is to provide a variety of housing types out there. Okay, not everything, when a 6,500 square foot lot with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath rancher is $450,000, and that's unattainable for our teachers and police officers, then we have different options. One of the things that we are proposing, and that is specifically on this property on South Thompson, is that there's a mixture of zones. One of those is R2 zone, which allows for the new cottage development code that the city of Post Falls just developed. So I'm not saying that it's not going to be duplexes. I'm not committing to anything other than the fact that we have the ability to do something different. This gives us a tool to use to solve this issue. Now, Mr. Wolf brought up, is this the right time? There was once upon a time, it was almost inconceivable to think of fieldstone development. 2001, that was my first project ever as an engineer. Carrie, I think you were on the council back then. I'm pretty sure the public hearing went till 2 in the morning.
Ron was.
Ron, you were there. It took forever. And now it's a vital part of our community. And so as we think about, well, does it fit there? Does it fit now? Well, it may not make sense if you're looking at it now, but we're talking about planning. We're doing prior proper planning. We're looking at it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense in the future? Okay. Now, this whole thing is one big part and parcel. So that's, John talked about that earlier tonight. And so that's why we're here, is to talk about, all right, well, if this were to come in today, what's the best thing? What's the best planning for the future? This is it. It gives us the ability to complement the tech park if and when that happens. It's owned by a developer who actually does things now. So we totally expect that to go. I know they're working on a wastewater master plan update that's gonna kick that off. And so, does it make sense if you're looking at it as you're driving on Highway 50, or 41 today? You know, you might question that, but again, Fieldstone, it was inconceivable. Now it's part of our community. So, when we're looking and planning for the future, that's what we're here to do tonight. So we're planning for our wastewater land application. So they use the water reclamation. I don't know if anyone here, a lot of people know what that really means. It's a fancy term for our sewage and the treated sewage. So, you know, they take the wastewater and they treat it, and it's at river water quality, but when it goes into the river, but at some point in time, forces that are beyond us, that are the EPA in particular, regulates the amount of phosphorus and other things that can go into the river. And so this is this is good prior proper planning for the city. With regards to parks on the South Thompson property, that's part of community planning. That's what we plan to do. So we don't build design subdivisions and communities that are way in the middle of nowhere and don't have any parks. We plan to design and build this so that it's got all of the amenities right there. It's got commercial, it's got multifamily, it's got different types of housing, it's gonna have parks, it's gonna have retail at the corner. It's got all of those things where we can actually achieve, it gives us the tools to achieve the goals of the city and the comprehensive plan in this particular location. Now, going back to the North Crown, should the school be out in the field? In your mind's eye, think about how many schools in Post Falls are out in the middle of a field, or wherever really out in the middle of a field. Okay, we're all surrounded by communities. We're all surrounded by neighborhoods. Ponderosa, Seltice Elementary, you know, just you go down the list. They're all surrounded by neighborhoods. And that's good planning. It's really good planning. You don't want to have to bus kids every time to school. You want to be able to walk to school, okay? Or their parents drive them a block. So this community plan that we have here, very intentional. We're going to have, you know, neighborhood streets. In a perfect world, if I ran the world and the transportation master plan, I would make Spokane Street north of there a local street. But I don't run the world, and I don't run the city's transportation master plan. It's there. We'll accommodate it. It's one of those things. It's going to be a local collector. We're not going to have any houses on it, but we'll have side streets coming off of it. We're going to commit to designing it so that it has traffic calming measures that are slowing traffic down, and do our best to create a community, because nobody wants little kids running out in the street and getting tagged by someone speeding. Okay, I don't want to walk out in the street and get tagged by somebody speeding. And really, to the end, to just really drive home the point, this is one heck of an opportunity for City Council. I counted somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 people here in opposition. There's 46,000 people in the city of Post Falls who are all going to benefit from the fact that there's additional open space on the prairie that'll be preserved for farming. It'll be preserved for land application. And it's those people that are counting on you to approve this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing. And I would like to say thank you for everybody that testified. I really appreciate the manner in which you did it.
Do we need to give the city a chance to rebut too, or?
Oh, I guess I should. Should we?
So if you have any questions on rebuttal from the city, I think that would be fine. You'd reopen the record for that, but
are you going to have questions?
Any questions?
No, I just wasn't sure if there's anything John had to say in response to
Thank you. Does anybody have a question, John? Do we need to reopen? Okay, thanks. But again, thank you all for the manner in which you spoke. I appreciate it. We've read so much lately about people being out of hand and calling out from the audience, and thank you very much for the way you acted. I do appreciate it. So the first question is, we're going to do it in 3 steps.
So, yeah, John's pulling it up here. We got some PowerPoints because to walk us through this. We're going to do this a little bit differently than we normally do because there's so many moving parts. We're going to start off tonight and have you evaluate whether or not the land exchange makes sense, because everything is contingent on that. If that falls apart, there's no reason to move on to any of the further discussions from there. We're going to try to handle the annexation quickly. Does the annexation make sense? And then as John has done through the night, we're going to sort of work west to east, reviewing the zone change criteria 3 different times to cover each of the 3 different classes of property, if that makes sense. That's what we're going to try to do. So
the first question is dealing with the land exchange.
Yeah, so the first question, this is what state code requires is that does the city council find that the proposed land exchange is in the city's best interest? That's it. So you can make your deliberation and discussion on that limited criteria.
I would say absolutely, and I would further define in the city's best interest, not the entity of the municipal government. It is in the best interest of the people who live in the city and utilize our wastewater treatment plant. Oh, I can't call it wastewater, can I?
We know what you mean.
Water reclamation.
That's
The water
official thing,
reclamation,
yeah.
but yeah, so all of the people, so I see that when it's capitalized like that, it's like it benefits the city, the government. In my opinion, it is in the best interest of the people of Post Falls.
I think that one's obvious. I've said it several times before, but the cornerstone of civilized society is to keep human waste far away from human activity. And of course, treating our wastewater is probably the most important thing in terms of sanitation and health the city does. And it's not just of benefit to Post Falls, but we also treat Rathdrum's water. So this is a net benefit to everybody in Post Falls and Rathdrum that flushes a toilet. So I think it's definitely in our best interest.
Well, and the comment was made, why do we need it? If we are processing enough wastewater that we need this at this point, maybe we need to do something different. If we're at the point where we don't need it right now, why would we do it? It's called proper planning. Everything we've talked about with all of our master plans, comprehensive plan projects out 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And in order to properly manage and plan for it, I would agree. I think it makes a ton of sense to have it adjacent to the other property that we have.
I would agree, obviously, on both points. That, serving the city's wastewater needs is paramount to what the city provides. The other part of it is, as the Mayor mentioned, is planning for the future is part of what we discussed earlier with the horizon that we have with the current capacities of our wastewater treatment plant. What are we looking at in the future for when we will need more land application usage? To wait for that need to be now rather than plan for it, I think is just foolish. And it brings into the conversation as well, there's an opportunity that is here that we may never see again. There's an opportunity cost with every decision that comes before us. So we could wait 10 years and this land would be gone, and then we would have to make other decisions, and most likely at a higher cost to the city. So I think all 3 of those factors kind of point me in the direction it is in the best interest of the city.
Thank you. Lynn?
It is in the best interest, there's no question about it in my mind. EPA is a big factor in us having to have the land for land application down the way. And I don't think, the prairie's evaporating, let's face it. I mean, we're building subdivisions and housing and everything else. So there's no better chance in my mind for us to pick up some much needed land for down the road.
Thank you. Kenny?
I would say it's not only beneficial, it's critical, as we have to treat it. We have to deal with the wastewater and the issues we have. So I think it's not only a good idea, I think the time is right to do that, and the price is right. We're not going to see that price ever.
Thank you.
So on this one, we don't need to have a reasoned decision, but we do need to have a motion on whether or not we should proceed with the land exchange.
I'd make a motion to proceed with the land exchange. Do I have to have a title?
No.
Okay.
It's what we noticed up for tonight, so.
Second.
Okay, so.
Motion second. Further discussion. Joe seconded.
Shove,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks for all your comments.
So
Next
now
up,
we're going to move to a more generic discussion of the annexation, and this is a similar type of analysis. Is it in the city's best interest to move forward with the two, or the annexation of the two different properties tonight? We don't necessarily need a motion on this, but we want to make sure that there is at least enough interest to move forward. If not, then we'd have a motion to deny the annexation.
let's start
So
this.
is a question,
Yeah, do we support the
would I be
annexation?
inclined to
Yes.
support moving forward with all the, yes, I would be inclined.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not one to annex land into the city just for the purpose of growing the city. There has to be a distinct and beneficial purpose to it, and I think we've demonstrated, with our previous question, that this annexation would make sense.
I concur. The one parcel number 5 is kind of one of those iffy situations for me, only because the tech park has never materialized over the period of time, and we spent a lot of time and effort in annexing that and classifying that a couple of years ago, and nothing's materialized. So yes, to have development to the north of that, timing again is probably my biggest concern with that, but is it in the best interest? I think it is.
Kenny?
With parcel 1, there are some concerns, but I think it would be overall, I'd be interested in annexing that. Parcel 5, I have concerns to the point that I don't think I would be in support of that.
Well, parcel 1's already part of the city, right?
Yes, so the annexations are if you look up there in the clouded bubbles, those are the properties that would be annexed. So that'd be,
Right, okay, so I guess my concern would be with parcel 5. That would be the one I'm not in favor of.
We had a couple expressions of concern over parcel 5. Do we need, we've had others that expressed.
so I think we can work our way through the zoning review criteria and sort of flesh that out. I think, again, we didn't need a motion necessarily, just if it looked like it was not going to pass on the annexation, then we could make a motion, and that's where we would stop without moving into the reasoned decision.
It looks, I think, with some caveats, everybody supported the annexation.
All right, so starting on the west side of town, we're going to run through these review criteria again, and we're going to go through all the way through all of the review criteria for each of the 3 different areas, and so we'll do this 3 times. For this one, the first review criteria is the requested zoning consistent with the future land use map.
It is. It fits the focus area for providing different types of housing, increased connectivity, kind of down the checklist of everything that's in that focus area in the comprehensive plan.
Any comments?
I think that covers it.
The one still minor concern I have is the multifamily on Hayden, where the focus area says to put it on Prairie, but there's nothing in the comprehensive plan that prohibits it on Hayden, so that doesn't stop it from happening.
Yeah.
Number 2, is it consistent with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan?
Someone else want to take this?
Yes.
Somebody else want to start?
I wasn't taking notes.
You want to try it, Nathan?
Yeah, I think it is consistent with what we have found in the comprehensive plan. With our focus areas that we've talked about along Prairie and then also north along Hayden, is consistent with surrounding areas with future development.
Yeah, anything else? Okay.
Number 3, zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. Any concerns or considerations of those factors.
Do you have any heartburn on those?
Hayden Avenue is, can easily handle the increased traffic presented by a development of this size. Traffic patterns at this point don't really exist through a development that doesn't exist, but the continuation of Spokane Street would certainly be able to accommodate that, as well as the new frontage road between the school property and the proposed development. Future land uses, with the school property right there, being able to join forces on utilities, transportation, et cetera, is of great benefit and fits with the comprehensive plan.
My hesitation with, sorry, Lynn, do you want to?
Go ahead.
My hesitation with street classification is Spokane Street going through those developments. My hope is that that traffic volume would be mitigated by the connectivity of Bodine in the future use to kind of redirect some of that traffic. I think it would address that satisfactorily enough for me.
You just took the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
But it's kind of, this is an aside, but as far as I understand the comprehensive plan and the transportation and the roads, is the classification is high enough to handle the amount of anticipated traffic. I don't think, are we even allowed to consider of a road that can handle too much traffic? That's kind of the...
In a roundabout way, yes, in that the next criteria speak to you typically don't put your lower level intensities in your high intensity areas, so that could be a higher intensity road area.
Okay.
So in a roundabout way, I think you get there.
Thank you.
All right, so this one has a little bit of everything in it. So commercial and high density residential zoning is typically assigned streets with a higher road classification.
Yep.
While this is a residential mixed zone, it does have some mixed uses along Hayden Avenue.
Which is that higher classification.
Lynn, is that what you
Yeah,
said?
it's an arterial, so.
Okay.
Number 5, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher intensity urban activity.
This is the one that's been tripping me up a little bit, and that our designated high traffic corridors in the area are Highway 41, Prairie Avenue, of course Seltice farther south, which is out of the scope of this one. And then as you move away from those, which this does, all of a sudden we end up with a pocket of higher density multifamily there at the corner of Hayden and whatever the new road's gonna be. That said, there's also a school going there, so I do think it's, to think of this development on its own, to be going down Hayden Avenue where there is, for the most part, nothing but larger lots, and with the land app site is going to be largely and hopefully forever, land app and agriculture. It'd be very strange to have 3-story apartment buildings on a corner in the middle of that. But then I think, well, the school's gonna be at least that tall. So that's gonna be fairly monolithic out there as well. So I'm not sure that, that multifamily in that location is precluded, mostly because of the high intense use of a school right across the street from it.
Sure, all right with it.
I'm okay, I mean, I can go with it.
Okay. Anybody else?
So that's the evaluation criteria for that one. So your motion would be either to approve or deny this based on the presentation tonight and your deliberations, and direct staff to prepare a reasoned decision consistent with your motion.
So we move first and then deliberate, I assume?
Sure.
So I would move to approve the Thompson, Satchwell, North Crown annexation and zone change with potential land
So we're
Oh.
just taking we'll build up to that. So you're just going to approve this piece, the North Crown.
Move to approve the North Crown annexation and zone, that's not even annexation, the North Crown zone change.
Yep.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Do you have something you want to?
So for me, making the motion, I think it's kind of strange to separate these things out piecemeal
It does.
because there's so much going on, but the benefit of the overall changes we're talking about tonight, for the most people, I think is vehemently very much in favor of it. Everybody who pays taxes in the school district is gonna benefit by having the savings of hooking up utilities and so forth there, and which is not unsubstantial. Again, everybody who likes indoor plumbing in the city of Post Falls and Rathdrum is gonna benefit from this project. There is, you know, admittedly, potentially a larger impact to those who live specifically in the Crown Point development. The hindsight is a bit funny though. So 10, 11 years ago when Crown Point came up, I was brand new city councilor, wet behind the ears. Smart code was the new shiny thing. And so we had a hearing just like this, and we had about the same amount of people that lived along Prairie Avenue near Crown Point saying the exact same things that we heard people in opposition to this development, that it's going to increase crime, that traffic is going to be out of control, that it's going to ruin Post Falls and turn it into California. And they're talking about your homes. I don't think your homes ruined Post Falls and turned it into California. So if we hadn't allowed it then your homes wouldn't exist. I think there were some lessons learned from Crown Point. We learned that smart code is no good for our town. So we've learned those lessons, and I think the newer development, well, I know new developments that have happened since then have required more parking, different qualifications, and they've been better developments. So I don't think this 80 acres north of Crown Point is going to ruin Idaho and turn it into California. But the ones I do feel really bad for are the ones that live just to the south of Bodine that had an expectation that it's city land, and it's, you know, for reuse and would likely never develop. Of course, nothing is never. My heart really does go out to you guys. It's a major change, and it's not what you expected. But with the given benefit to the school district and all those taxpayers, to the water users in Post Falls and Rathdrum, I have to support it.
You know, I'd like to comment too on Crown Point. Again, same thing, when Crown Point was approved. We had people just to the east of you that were so concerned because of the increased density. They're on large tract family compound. They didn't want it there. They've got it. I do have, I guess I appreciate where it comes from, but I take exception to a couple of comments made in the homeowner association letter. Post Falls is not policing developments. Well, I'm here to tell you that my spouse and my brother-in-law are building 4 homes. We're not developers. We've had to redo things because the stair was 1/8 of an inch too high. We've had to redo work because a window was 1 inch too high. We have had to have compaction testing time and again. We've gone through the process. So I see it from the city's perspective, but now I'm seeing it from the other side. I'm here to tell you the city polices their development, much to my chagrin in some cases, because it cost us a lot more work. We do police our development. The fact that maybe a developer used a product that wasn't as good as it could have been, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't know if the city can say you have to have X number of bags of you know, in your concrete mix, et cetera. But the roads that the city puts in, they last. I mean, you've got to do maintenance, you've got to chip seal, and eventually you have to replace them. But the city holds ourselves and the work that we do to a high standard. You talk about police and fire. Well, the police department and the fire department, we're not opposed to this. And, you know, there's comments made about how we can't police and the crime's going up. I look at the crime reports every week. And I think, and I'm a strong supporter of our police department. They do an excellent job. And with additional growth, you're going to have additional people, and that necessitates additional officers. And you talk about losing police officers, not being able to keep them, not being able to train them. I don't think that's the case. We have a couple openings, but for the most part, we've been very successful in retaining our police officers and attracting new police officers, properly training them and properly equipping them. And council has been extremely supportive in the budget cycles, budget process of making sure that we have funds available for our police department. So again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I don't accept some of the things that were said. I appreciate where you're coming from, but I think there were some things in there that were not properly, or maybe were a bit inaccurate, so I just wanted to mention that. Any other comments?
I've got one.
Carrie?
I agree with all of Joe's comments. I would hope that everyone that commented and everybody's here knows that we do listen and we do live here. We live here. So I will tell you, I use Spokane Street. I have used Spokane Street multiple times a day since 1987 when we bought our home in Pioneer Ridge, which at the time was 2 blocks and about 20 houses. I still live in that home. So now I go up Spokane Street and I go around a roundabout to go onto Pole Line. The point being, things are going to change. There are a lot of people that I know that I wouldn't know if none of the houses in Pioneer Ridge, other than our 2 blocks, had ever been built, or any of the neighborhoods and subdivisions up there. And a lot of those people are active and engaged in the community and have benefited and made life better. So I never look at it as houses and just, just the house and just the road. I look at it as the people too. So while we do all of our planning and do our best with transportation and all of those things, I'm looking forward to the people that we would meet and know and who would become part of our community with this annexation.
Anybody else?
I just had one quick comment, and I know it's hard to separate this one piece out from the whole kind of package that we're looking at tonight.
Yeah.
But one of the big factors for me is the way that the developer has incorporated support for the neighboring school. I'm a big advocate for our public school system here. I have 4 kids of my own in our public school system. We had many city council meetings leading up to the latest levy where we were reminding people to vote. And that's a big part of what I think makes Post Falls a great community, is the strength of our public school system. I think Dina does a great job as a superintendent to advocate for our students, but in a fair and very transparent way, even the way she was presenting the levy. So that was one thing I really wanted to mention about what makes this part of the whole package deal much more attractive to me than probably any other single factor.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Ron, could I say one more thing that I forgot?
Sure.
Because you reminded me with the schools. I've served on the council since I was really young. It's since 2008. I have never seen the superintendent of schools come to a city council meeting and give testimony in favor. Generally, it's just not something they do, in favor or not in favor. Generally not something they do. That was pretty impressive to have the Post Falls district superintendent come and talk about the value to the school district for that, so.
Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, working our way east.
Oh, my God. What day is it?
So we're going to tackle the public reserve annexations kind of as a group because the considerations are the same. It makes your deliberations, I think, a little bit easier, and then we'll move to the last piece of this. So this one, I think, will be a little bit quicker because the land use is pretty basic.
Straightforward.
So number 1, is it consistent with future land use map?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And number 2, consistent with goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Number 3, zoning's full assigned following consideration of such items: street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic and natural features.
Yes.
Yes.
And then,
Specific stuff, your reasoned decision, or is?
Yeah.
I can work with it. This one,
The other 3 really aren't applicable.
yeah, they're not really applicable, the last 3.
Goals
These
and
ones,
policies is certainly serving the public health, because this is obviously really important to keep stuff out of the river. Traffic patterns, it's reuse, so there are no traffic patterns. So any
Consistent
road-
with neighboring adjacent parcels, so they're exactly the same thing.
Any road will do.
and that's kind of it, because the last 3 don't really apply, because this is a public reserve use. It's not an industrial, residential, commercial use. So with that, you would make a motion to approve the annexation or deny the annexation of those three pieces, the land app pieces, and direct staff to prepare a reasoned decision consistent with your motion.
So moved to approve.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you.
All right, so the last one, this is the mixed-use property along Highway 41,
Area 5.
Area 5.
Very.
351.
I don't know why I found that funny, but it did. Review criteria number one, is is the requested zoning consistent with the future land use map?
Yes, it's got commercial and high density along Highway 41 and Hayden Avenue.
Lower density moving away from higher arterials.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
You guys okay?
Yep.
Number two, is it consistent with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan?
Yes, it allows for a variety of housing types. It allows for commercial development, which is economic benefit.
Anyone, anything else?
You're nailing it, Joe.
Been doing this a while.
Thank you.
Number three, zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic or natural features, excuse me.
I'd say yes, the street
I would say yes.
classifications are obviously more than adequate. Traffic patterns, they're kind of a symbiotic relationship here. High traffic benefits commercial, and
Existing development is consistent along the 41 corridor.
Number four, commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with a higher road classification.
check.
Highway 41.
Number five, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from high-intensity urban activity.
It's like the proposal is just following this to a T.
With colors.
And the last one is not applicable since that's for industrial zoned products. With that, it would be a motion to either approve or deny the annexation of the south piece. Direct staff to prepare a reasoned decision consistent with your motion.
So move to approve.
Second.
Motion second, discussion.
I think to address public comment made by Mr. Wolf, is this the right time? So we've got the right time, right place. There's the technology mix to the south, which of course not much has happened on, but I know there's a lot of grumbling in the backgrounds about potential projects. That does allow for up to, I believe, 20% residential in that zone, right? So having residential in that corner, I don't think is as incompatible as he made it out to be, because residential is also allowed to the south of Hayden Avenue in the technology mix. So that may turn out to be a pretty nice flow of residential and commercial up along Highway 41. It is kind of an odd spot with the overpass over the railroad there. So I understand, when I first looked at it, I thought it's kind of a weird place to put apartments, not having driven up there in a long time, forgetting that anything that's back there you're not going to see. So yeah, not a really good spot for commercial. I wouldn't go, so it wouldn't benefit anybody. So that makes sense to me. I don't think it's that incompatible with the master plan and what's potentially could go there.
I think I kind of echo the same thing. As I've thought about it more, I'm okay with it more. I think the time frame of not planning to do anything for a while is kind of a hesitation because it will change. I think I'm at a point that I'm okay with it.
And one of my concern usually, if anybody's paying attention to these meetings for since I've been here is the Highway 41 corridor has been
Yeah.
usually my number one, just say no.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's in the development agreement, they're not gonna develop that until the
Interchange.
interchange is done, or 5 years, whichever is later. That's usually what I ask for. And that answered that too. So if anybody who's paid attention to my voting record is looking at me like I'm crazy for supporting this, that's why.
Well, and I believe that it's been 2 years in the making between the city and the developers and all of that, that this, what we are seeing now has been a couple years in the making and planning and all of that. And I think it shows in the proposal.
Roll call, please.
Shove,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Does that do it?
That's it.
Great. So the next item on the agenda tonight is unfinished business, returning ordinances and resolutions. And we have one ordinance, the DBAT facility, zone change.
And nobody's gonna talk about that, right? I'm just gonna
you
make
just-
the.
yep.
Yeah. I would move to place the ordinance DBAT facility zone change file number ZC-22-6 on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for a change in zoning classification for the land described in Section 1 of this ordinance from heavy industrial to industrial, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect the change, providing that all prior zones applicable to lands described in Section 1 are hereby superseded, and providing an effective date.
I move to approve the ordinance DBAT facility zone change file number ZC-22-6 and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Next up is new business, and we're going to get to hear from Mr. Paulus. First is the I-90 State Highway 41 Interchange Cooperative Agreement with ITD.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. Somewhat unusual, but I do not have a PowerPoint for you this evening.
Thank you.
There's good and bad to that.
Because he's got a great memory, he can memorize it all.
I know my material. The cooperative agreement between the state of Idaho, Idaho Transportation Department, and the city of Post Falls for the I-90 State Highway 41 interchange. Several years ago, the city of Post Falls staff started working with the Idaho Transportation Department to work with them as they designed the project that is currently under construction. We were looking at how their project interacts with the city of Post Falls, and their project does have some areas that require the city of Post Falls to participate in the construction of the project. A couple of years ago in 2020, we went through the similar process with the State Highway 41 widening project. We had a couple $1 million worth of improvements that we participated in. With the I-90 Highway 41 interchange, areas that we typically have participation in are traffic signals, sewer and water improvements, bicycle and pedestrian improvements. For the project here, during the course of the project, there currently are 8 traffic signals. Excuse me, I'm getting onto the wrong project. The next presentation has 8 signals to deal with. This one has 5 traffic signals. ITD is reducing the number of traffic signals out there. There's a new spewey, which is the new interchange itself. They are rebuilding the Mullen Avenue and Highway 41 traffic signal. There'll be a new traffic signal at Hareborn and Seltice Way. And then the existing signal at Highway 41 and Ross Point Road goes away and will be reconstructed as what's called a HAWK signal. HAWK just stands for high intensity, high intensity crosswalk. And I don't know how they got that acronym, but it does kind of work. And what a HAWK system is a traffic signal that's designed for pedestrians and bicyclists who are using, in this case, the Centennial Trail to push a button. The traffic signal will go from blanked out. It will then be activated and stop traffic so that pedestrians have a safe way to cross Seltice Way, which will remain to be a busy roadway even with the new interchange. What ITD is looking at for participation from the city of Post Falls in terms of traffic signals, they are looking for us to participate with the Mullen Avenue and State Highway 41 traffic signal rebuild. The normal methodology is that ITD looks at how many lanes, and based upon how many lanes are in that intersection, the city's lanes are divided out by the total. We've worked out with them to go a little bit different. What we do is we look at how many new lanes are being created on the city's system and divide that out by the total. That ends up reducing the city's participating share. The city's share in this project is about 33% of a approximately $1.5 million traffic signal. So that would be for the city of Post Falls, $493, or $493,839. I wish a traffic signal was that cheap. That would come out of traffic impact fees, and we did identify in our impact fees, we have more money than that in there, so this actually came in under what we were anticipating a couple years ago. Along Highway 41, the city of Post Falls has water and sanitary sewer in place. Those exist, and they are not in easements to the city of Post Falls. They are by an encroachment permit in ITD's right-of-way. So anything that is in the way, we need to move at our cost. In terms of water, we have a water line that runs from Mullen Avenue all the ways down to I-90 and currently crosses underneath I-90. We need to reconstruct that water line in its entirety to I-90. We will keep the piece that is underneath the interstate in place, but we are going to be putting in a new casing underneath the new interchange to accommodate if we need to replace that line in the future, we have a place to put a new line. The impact to the water system is $637,153.75. Sanitary sewer modifications, there's a few locations where the existing sanitary sewer needs to be cased to get the proper separation from storm sewer and water pipes, and that's to protect and promote the safety of the water system that we have. And then there's a couple of locations where we are needing to provide additional stub outs and adjust our sewer system just a little bit. The cost for the sanitary sewer is $31,350. And then lastly, there are numerous revisions to the Centennial Trail. Those are included as part of the project except on Ross Point Road, where the city has worked with ITD to put a, it's basically you take both lanes of instead of having a bicycle lane on both sides of Ross Point Road, we're going to put both bicycle lanes on the west side of Ross Point and separate it from traffic with a curb with delineators on that. And then once you get down past 3rd Avenue or past where Capone's is at, then the bike lanes will allow for the northbound traffic on the bicycle lane. If someone was coming from down by the park and Maplewood Avenue, they would cross at 3rd Avenue to get onto that bicycle facility. ITD is looking for $29,808.90 towards that. That would come out of our multimodal impact fees. That was a project that we had identified within our impact fees.
Rob, water and sewer, where were those funds coming from?
Water was coming from our water department and their replacement fund.
Okay.
And same with the sanitary
Okay,
sewer.
thank you.
Each one would come out of the correct department for that. Grand total, the cooperative construction agreement is looking for $1,192,151.65. It would be payable to the state within 90 days of the execution of the agreement. Basically, we're setting it up so that we pay them by the end of this budget year. Everything is available within the correct line items from either water reclamation, or the impact fees that we have. Stand for any questions.
Questions, Rob?
So we're essentially paying in advance of the work being done, or it's being done right now, I guess?
So
part of it.
the normal methodology is that we pay the state at the time that it goes out for bid, and then based upon the bid, there's some corrections that are made. This project, because the state is moving it faster, they went to bid and started construction ahead of getting this agreement done. We've been working on this agreement for 8 months. It's involved staff from Public Works, Parks and Recreation, and the Engineering Department and Community Development.
So since it's already been bid, it's less likely to change.
It's unlikely to change because these prices reflect the actual bid prices.
Yeah.
And are contingencies built into this?
There are not contingencies built into this. For reflection on Highway 41, we had over $2 million worth of investment, and ITD at this point has said they anticipate zero change in what they have asked for. Part of it is we have a good working relationship with them, and the people I work with ITD, they kind of look out for our stuff a little bit, and we work together to try to solve problems without adding additional cost to the city.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the I-90 State Highway 41 Interchange Project A02442 City and ITD Cooperative Construction Agreement.
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes, thanks. And then the next one up is State Highway 41 Seltice Way to Hayden Avenue. It's a ITD Memorandum of Understanding.
Once again, good evening, council members and honorable mayor. A couple years ago, the city of Post Falls entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Idaho Transportation Department for the improvements of State Highway 41 from 12th Avenue up to Hayden Avenue. With the current construction going on I-90 and State Highway 41, it requires a similar memorandum of understanding. However, in this case, in order to reduce the number of agreements that we have with ITD, we took the one that we agreed to back in 2020 and combined it with the new improvements that are being done with the I-90-41 interchange. What the memorandum of understanding lays out is the responsibilities for different pieces of maintenance that occur on the roadway, and in this case, it'll be everything from Seltice Way up to Hayden Avenue. At present, the city of Post Falls is responsible for maintaining the multi-use path along Highway 41, maintenance being removing snow, keeping it clean of debris. Any replacement that needs to be done is a responsibility of ITD. That falls beyond normal maintenance. The city of Post Falls is responsible at present for the operating cost, that's the electricity to operate the traffic signals of Mullen Avenue, 16th Avenue, Poline Avenue, Prairie Avenue, Hope Avenue, and Hayden Avenue. With the new agreement, ITD has backed off, and the city of Post Falls will only be responsible for the energy costs of the intersections of Hope Avenue and 16th Avenue. Within the work that's being done with the I-90 Highway 41 interchange, ITD will maintain the energy costs for the traffic signals associated with that. Presently, in the I-90 interchange, we are paying for the costs of the on and off ramps as well as the Highway 41 Seltice intersection and the Seltice Way Hairborn Avenue. So we're seeing a reduction in 4 traffic signals from what we're taking care of today with this new agreement. It's not a lot, but it's around $10,000 a year. If you have talked with me about 15 years ago and we're still using incandescent lights on traffic signals, it would have been about 3 times that amount in savings. It's an improvement. One thing in traffic signals that you should be aware of is that if a traffic signal is damaged on the state highway system, part of the agreement is that based upon what we paid for the share of the cost of building that signal, that would be our share if that signal was damaged and had to be replaced, and neither the state nor the city could track down or hold the correct person responsible. That amount varies from about 15% to about 50% in the cost of a traffic signal, and the ITD signals are running about $1.5 million apiece. Again, that's an area where our methodology helps save money a little bit. One other area, roadway illumination, currently on I-90, or not on I-90, on Highway 41 between Mullen Avenue and Seltice Way, there's about 40 streetlights. The city currently owns those lights, and we pay for the electrical costs on those. That was from a construction project back in 2002. With this new memorandum of understanding, those lights are going away, and the new lights that are being replaced, ITD will take over the electrical cost on those. That's about $15,000 a year in savings on that. The Hawk signal, which I mentioned before, that is completely owned by the state. Since we're not paying towards that, the state would be responsible for replacing it. And I do have to correct myself. That is the one signal down around I-90 that we would be paying the electrical cost for.
Okay.
Based upon, since it's not a typical traffic signal, we're looking at about $39 a month for a signal of that size. And I stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Gotta do what we gotta do.
Entertain a motion.
I move to approve the State Highway 41 Seltice Way to Hayden Avenue City and ITD Memorandum of Understanding.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes, thanks. Thanks, Rob. Last item under new business is resolution for sole source determination and purchase of water reclamation service truck. John?
Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council. Pretty easy compared with what you've had the rest of the night to work through. We've been looking for a new service truck for the water reclamation collections group, especially for this fiscal year. And it's, as you probably know, really difficult to buy vehicles right now, especially custom-made 6500 series trucks. We could still move forward with a 1.5-year process of going through the normal procurement process. Probably not a 1.5 years, probably a year out from where we are now. But we did come across a truck that is available, meets our needs, and the price is probably better than we'll get elsewhere. To purchase that specific truck without doing bidding, which bidding is problematic just in terms of process-wise, we come to you, we ask for permission to get one specific truck from one specific vendor. We would publish that for 30 days. If there's any objections to it, to that sole source procurement, if somebody says they can beat the price or the time frame, I think that comes back, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Wilson. It doesn't come back if there's objections.
If there's objections, then we would resolve it, and we're probably bidding at that point, so.
Okay, perfect. So we would post it. If there's no objections, we would move forward with the purchase. If there are objections, we would resolve them, as you said. Purchase price is $175,000 for the outfitted truck. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions?
And you're buying it local.
Yes.
Gotta have it.
I do want to point out quickly that before we got to this step, that we wouldn't even have considered this if there was other trucks reasonably available in a reasonable time frame. We did reach out to other vendors asking, can you get a truck in some reasonable period of time that fits within the range of time that we need the truck? No one had anything available. They couldn't get one within a year. So given that basis, we moved forward with this.
Makes sense.
So basically, we had a bunch of no bids.
Yeah, we reached out and there's just no one else that could supply one within a year.
Well, I would make a motion. You need a motion, right?
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve the resolution for the sole source determination and purchase of the water reclamation service truck.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Next item on the agenda, citizens issue. And this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues not on the agenda. Anyone wish to speak, come forward and give your name. Being Samantha is the only non-employee here.
Troopers over here.
Yeah.
We'll go down into administrative staff reports.
We have none.
Oh, thank you. Mayor and council comments. I have none. Council?
No comment.
Nope.
Thank you very much. We do not need an executive session.
We do not.
The next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.